Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Very happy to be back in the air chair. Happy to be with you here at our Broadway studios. Going to hang out, have a little bit of fun, talk about the world of sports as we are prone to do. The show is brought to you today and every day by our friends down at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. If you are not going to Vegas on Tuesday night for the next Mammoth versus Golden Knights game, get down to Big Willie's, 1717 South Main, and join the watch party down there. Have a little bit of fun with some like-minded Mammoth fans. And if you see somebody in a Golden Knights sweater, challenge them to a game of pool or whatever at the number one pool hall. Maybe bet a beverage or something on the result of the game. We're going to talk a lot of Mammoth today. Nick Olczyk is going to swing by at noon. We'll have a little draft preview again with Devin Jackson. Looking forward to that conversation. It is NFL draft week. If you are Caleb Lomu, Lander Barton, Spencer Fano, Dallin Bentley, Logan Fano, I cannot even imagine how nerve-wracking this week is. We're going to do our best to try and grab a couple of those guys and have them on, but man, it is a jam-packed week for the draft hopefuls. If you were listening to the Rich Eisen show leading into this, you heard Fernando Mendoza on those airwaves talking about, his status as a projected number one. He's 78 hours according to the Pat McAfee show countdown on my television screen right now. Just under 79 hours away from having your name called if you're a first-round guy. That is what an occasion. So we'll do our best to do it justice. Dan Sorensen, the founder of Ute Zone, is he's going to join us at 1 o'clock. We'll talk a little bit of Utah spring football recap. I have a poll question up right now at Real OC Sports. You can always text us at 877-353-0700. If you went to the Fan Fest, the Utah Football 22 Forever fan event that happened up at the indoor field house, I'm told, breaking in my ear, that they estimated 3,000 to 4,000 Utah fans showed up to this thing. And look, I was there with the kids. We had a blast. The drills that they had set up in the middle of the field, where the position coaches were running the kids, the kid zone, I think they called it, were running the kids through the stuff that you would do, as a player. And my kids loved it. My two oldest were dressed as Utah cheerleaders. My oldest now thinks that she is going to be a defensive end after running the hoop drill and tackling those dummies. It was awesome. It was a really cool event. I did not stand in line for the autographs, and I know that a lot of you out there did. I didn't feel it was necessary. I had a 2-year-old with me. I'm not going to make her stand in line for 45 minutes or an hour, however long it was. But the poll question I have up is a simple one, and you can text me as well, 877-353-0700. Was that equal to the spring game? Was that better than the spring game? Was that worse than the spring game? It's a new thing. It's a different approach to capping off spring football. And again, the coaching staff, Morgan Scalley specifically, and his assistant coaches all agreed that, our time and effort is better spent on running another real practice, getting a 16th practice out of spring football instead of doing a spring scrimmage where, let's be honest, you put the governor chip on all your best players. You don't even dress them in a lot of cases. You give them a pitch count, and I loved it. I've always enjoyed a spring game because you get to see a bunch of guys that are like special teamers actually playing and maybe project out, all right, hey, what's that kid, what's number 37 going to be, 2 years down the road? But that's not everyone's cup of tea. That's not everyone's bag, and that's fine. If your whole thing is you want to watch the best players, or more importantly, more pointedly, for what we saw this past weekend, you want to go out there and you want to get to have a little conversation, get an autograph, maybe get a picture with the best players on the team, get a little point of contact for you and your super fan kids, this was probably a better event than sitting at the stadium. But you tell me, 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. You can vote on the Twitter poll, and it's simple. Was it better than the spring game, worse than the spring game, or equal to the spring game? We just put this thing up. So far, only a few votes, only a handful of votes. At Real OC Sports, get out there and tell me what you think of it. More pointedly this weekend, more interestingly, you have playoff hockey for your home team happening right now. The series began last night in Vegas, and the Utah Mammoth, through periods 1 and 2, looked like they were going to win the first ever playoff game that this franchise, this version of the franchise, the Utah Hockey Club / Mammoth franchise, looked like through 40 minutes plus they were going to win their first ever playoff game. And then Vegas decided that they were going to take advantage of their advantages. They were going to be the bullies, and they were out physicaling, they were out hitting, they were out smashing Utah for the entire game. In the third period, it became a massive problem for this Mammoth team that, of course, is one of the top goal-scoring teams in the NHL, has a ton of snipers, has some really excellent speed, has, I think, the best version of itself, has excellent puck movement in the offensive zone, and Vegas turned it up and took all that away. Just said, no, we're not allowing this anymore. And the Mammoth are going to have to figure out a way to respond. It got worse when they decided they needed to go. They're down 3-2. They decided they needed to go empty net with about 2 minutes left, and there was some miscommunication between Veggie and Coach Bear, or the bench and Veggie, or Veggie, he wasn't even looking at the bench when everyone started to call him over, and that might have been problematic. So you get a scenario, a nightmare scenario where you're going empty net, which we know is kind of a desperation situation anyway, right? And has only worked one time so far for the Utah Mammoth this year. And he vacates the net just as Vegas is taking possession of the puck way down the ice, but these are professional hockey players. When they see an empty net, they're going to pitch it down there and see what happens. And so you go down 4-2. And that was the nail in the coffin. That was it. And it drove home a point that the Mammoth just got discombobulated and confused in the third period of that game. And I think it was the physicality of the Knights that caused that to happen. But you got to find a way to respond. You got to try to win a game. And you showed that you're capable of scoring against this Vegas team. So I'm not overly worried that you're going to have some like disastrous second outing on Tuesday night. But that one was an opportunity that slipped through your fingers. That one, if you just played the same type of game in the third period that you did in 1 and 2, you could have won your first ever playoff game. And credit to the Knights. Credit to them for leaning on what they've got. Credit to them for realizing, like, you know what? We're the team with a bunch of experience. We're the team with more star power. We're the team that should be dictating the way that this game is played. And they started to dictate the way that it's played. And Hart in goal just stood on his head in the third. It's not that the Mammoth didn't get shots and didn't get chances. They still found ways, but Hart looked really, really good in the third period, and that's just the way things are going to go sometimes. I will say this. Friday night, when the Mammoth come back home.
I cannot wait for that, by the way, OC.
It's going to be insane.
It's so awesome.
It's going to be, I imagine, just like the first ever franchise game at the Delta Center was a singular, excellent atmosphere in Utah sporting history. I imagine that this Friday night, the same thing will happen. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it's a necessity as well. Vegas, you could say a lot of things about that city. You could say a lot of things about the sports fans in that city. The Golden Knights, they do it right in their arena. The fan support, the production, the dang Gila Monster mascot. I mean, all of it is really good, okay?
Part of the game production is that fortress that would look very strange and out of place anywhere else. but they pull it off because they're Vegas and they know how to put on a show. It's incredible.
They just turn it all up to 11, and they do a great job, right? You have to match that energy, especially because of the hostilities. I think that this is a time where, look, the NHL has embraced Utah, and that's a good thing. Other players, other franchises have been like, hey, wow, these fans show up. It's pretty loud in there. Things are, for not being a hockey town, they've really done, but it's a little bit patronizing, the way in which they're just like, hey, you guys, not bad for newbies.
Nice little thing you got going on there.
It's pretty cool what you guys have going on, right? Playoff hockey, you've got to take it up a notch over what the Delta Center usually is, because, and especially because, the hostilities on the ice are only going to perpetuate themselves through the course of this series. Nick Dowd was telling Logan Cooley, I'm going to kill you, with blood on the front of his sweater. You know what, Nick Dowd?
Insane.
I'm going to kill you. You don't say that to our guy. You're a grown adult. That's a young kid. Cooley can barely buy a drink. He can't even grow a playoff beard. Dowd is 35 years old. Don't talk to our boy like that. Somebody's got to smash that guy. When the game went final, Sergachev was like looking for somebody to fight. That is the energy I want all series long against this Vegas Knights team. Because if you let them dictate things the way they did in that third period, if you let them out-physical you for 60 minutes a night, it's going to get really, really ugly. And there's ways that they've got more size. They've got more playoff experience. You're probably not going to be able to just beat them punch for punch, strength for strength. There are ways that you can use your speed to minimize some of their physicality, that you can use your speed to become physicality, right? It's draft week. How many times have you heard translate speed to power? You got to figure these things out, and I'm not the right guy to tell you how it's done technique-wise, but we have seen great players and great teams do that without having the biggest bodies on the ice. And it's obvious that if it's just like a who's bigger, that's Vegas wins that.
By the way, you or I aren't the right people to tell you how you do that, but our guest at noon, Nick Olczyk, who's color analyst for the Mammoth, he also does some playoff work with Sports USA. You heard him on Sports USA here on ESPN 700 on Saturday. He's coming on at noon. He can help answer that question for us.
4-2 the final. And man, it was so close. You had a couple of good looks in the third when you were down 3-2. That could have been the equalizer there, and obviously that changes the complexion of a game. You have to figure out what's going on with your penalty kill. They're what now? They're 13 for the last 21, I believe. That's not a percentage that you like as a Mammoth fan. Kerfoot, love you, dude. That penalty in the third, and you killed the penalty down to 12 seconds left. Shorthanded. 12 seconds left shorthanded. And then just ran out of gas. Stenlund was just like diving for pucks and trying to pitch it back down the ice just to buy more time. And it almost worked. Veggie gets pulled way out of the crease, way out in front. You got a wide open. I mean, you could have driven a minivan. You could have driven the Zammoth through the spot.
Good.
That was
good
vacated.
Course correction by you there. Yeah.
And that was their captain, Stone, Mark Stone, who equalized at 2-2. And then from there, it was just like, man, Uyghur lost a handle on a puck. And obviously he's been a great addition since the trade. He lost a handle on a puck that he sort of stole away. And you just can't, those little mistakes, and I know we're all learning this together, but we see this in every sport, right? When you get to a certain level in the season, when you get to playoffs, when you get to conference championship weekend, when you get to like where, you know, the rubber truly meets the road, everybody's dialed in at a different level. Your team, yourself should be on your team, and also your competition is going to be dialed in on a different level, and the mistakes become that much more costly. And in the third, the Mammoth had a couple of situations where they were a little bit sloppy with pucks or with gathering loose pucks or with passing out of a pressure situation. And that translated into the go-ahead goal for the Mammoth in the Uyghur turnover case. The go-ahead goal for the Knights, I should say. And then you got the empty netter to really ice it away 4-2. So that's how it looked. That's how it was. Now you got to find a way to course correct. And you got to do it while you're in Vegas in a hostile environment with a team that I would not be surprised if you have, like you did in the Florida Panthers Ottawa Senators series. Did you see that the first fight of the series happened 3 seconds after the puck dropped?
Yeah.
It took 3 seconds. It was Stahl for Ottawa, and it was Kachuk for Florida, if I'm not mistaken. And they just dropped the gloves and started swinging.
Playoffs, baby. We heard that, and those of you that like you and I, OC, that started tuning in a lot more to the playoffs the last couple of years because you got a team here. We've been told before that, and you saw it if you've been watching the last couple of seasons, and more than that, obviously, that's how it goes in the playoffs. There's way more fights. There's a lot more skirmishes, even if they're not dropping their gloves and actually boxing each other. We saw that, there was like 3 or 4 of those in the first period alone in the Mammoth game in Vegas. And
well, you saw another one when I think about 5 minutes left in the third, if I'm not mistaken, where Gunther got a really nice chance on kind of a breakaway, but there was a whistle for him being offside, right? And he still took the shot after being whistled offside. Now, this is an insanely loud arena, an insanely loud moment in the arena. It's coming down to true crunch time in this game. And Vegas, I think, had already been whistled for offside. And then, obviously, play doesn't stop until Vegas takes possession again. And Gunther is just barely offside. Whistle comes. He still shoots it at the goal, which in hockey is a cardinal sin.
It's not like basketball then, where you get the whistle blows and the guy takes a practice shot and no one cares.
In hockey,
except for Kevin Garnett,
everybody is Kevin Garnett. In hockey, every single player on the ice is Kevin Garnett.
No practice shots.
You don't get practice shots. You don't send a puck towards my goalie when we've heard a whistle. You're not allowed to do that, right? And Gunther, whether he heard it or not, he did it, right? And the entire 5-on-5 became just like a skirmish, a little scuffle, everyone grabbing everyone, gloves in faces, shoving each other, talking you know what. And I was just like, man, this is chippy already. We're in game 1, and this is chippy. And it was sometimes when your team is not playing all that well, or when your team is from behind, trying to play from behind, your natural tendency is to be a lot more chippy. It was Vegas who was chippy. I think they maybe came into the series being like, look, let's try to scare these kids off of this thing. Let's let these guys know what it's like. And so Vegas
use our experience to combat their lack of experience. And physicality is the way to do that in the playoffs.
And look, I mean, go back and watch it. Go back and watch the end of the game. Final horn blows. All right? Vegas, half the team goes and skates off to celebrate. The other half of the team is face-to-face, eye contact, jaw-jacking, pointing fingers, making threats. And in the case of Keegan Colasar and Mikhail Sergachev, they're holding on to each other's collars and having a little conversation. The game is over. Vegas has just won their first playoff game of the season. The Mammoth are like, dang it, missed opportunity. And those two were contemplating, with the game in the books done, those two were contemplating dropping the gloves right there, having a little conversation about it. I would not be shocked if we saw Mikhail Sergachev in the first 1 minute of Tuesday night fighting somebody. And you know what? I'm here for it. If it's an energizing thing, if it's something that will wake up, I don't think you need to wake up. I think this team was awake. I think they just kind of like took the foot off the gas pedal a little too much. Or maybe not even that, but probably just underestimated how capable Vegas was going to be to elevate their level in that third period.
I think also, OC, I think a lot of the team goes without saying, a lot of the team, this is their first playoff game. There's more than we think that we think of this team as no one's played the playoffs. There's more than we think on this Mammoth team that has plenty of playoff experience, but there's still a lot that this is either their first or they've had very few games before this, right?
And in the case of even the guys who have a ton of playoff experience, your role on this team is different than your playoff experience was.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have that. They may or may not have had multi-year runs in the playoffs on their teams. This is the first time they're still figuring that out. I think Vegas did the right thing in trying to be the bullies because they do have, a bevy of playoff experience, not just individually, but together. They won the Cup 3 years ago, right? And most of that core is still in Vegas. I think they did the right thing in saying we're going to show them what playoff hockey is, and that means we're going to knock this you-know-what out of them every chance we get. The amount of – what was there? There was at least 2 in the first couple of periods alone, and probably more in the third period, where in football you call them D-cleaters, right? I don't know what you call it in hockey. Is it D-skaters, where like most of the hits you see are right up against the boards? There was multiple that Vegas – didn't even bother hitting them up against the boards. They just lifted them off the ground with how hard they hit them, and the Mammoth players unfortunately fell on their backsides. Right? I don't know if you can be totally prepared enough when you don't have a ton of playoff experience, particularly together, for that kind of physicality in maybe your first playoff game.
You were out hit in this game 52-30. If you follow any of the Vegas Knights insiders, that was their favorite stat. That was their thing. And we'll talk with Nick Olczyk about, what it really, truly translates to when you are hitting 52-30 as a hit differential. The Mammoth are not going to win a lot in playoff hockey. They're not going to, I don't think, have more hits than a lot of opponents that are in this playoff field. Their style of play, even though we've heard Bill Armstrong talk about it and heard Coach Bear talk about it, a desire to have that kind of identity, that physical intimidator identity. You don't have the bodies for that right now. It's not disparaging. It's not an insult. It's just you are a little bit more of a finesse team than you probably want to admit that you are. And that's why you're in the playoffs, because you're so proficient as goal scorers. How many times did this team shut out their opponents this year? I think it's once. Was it twice? Right? You're a volume scoring team. You've got a bunch of guys, even on your blue line, that can put the puck in the back of the net. It's a good thing on one hand. On the other, you look at a stat like this, and you're, especially as kind of a new hockey newbie, you're like, wait, is that as bad as I think it is? And the answer is yes, it's as bad as you think it is. You can't let that gap. It's the basketball equivalent of you got out-rebounded 52-30.
It's a great call by you, because the rebounding is it connotes physicality in basketball for sure. Like that sort of thing. It's a great comparison.
It's the football equivalent of your opponent rushed for 150 yards and you rushed for 80.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's the line of scrimmage in this game was established and held and dominated by the Vegas Knights. Any pundit would have told you that they have an advantage there, but you cannot let the reality of this series be a continuation of that stat line.
Just because we've spent now 25 minutes talking about how physicality is one of the most important things and one of the biggest differences in the uptick in that is one of the biggest differences in playoff hockey versus regular season hockey. doesn't mean the Mammoth have no chance in this series.
Not even close.
One game, they played really well. I will say this about the goal scoring that concerns me. They got plenty of good shots, especially early, but the fact that they really only scored one goal, the other one was basically an own goal that was credited to Stenlund because he was the closest guy to it.
It was a deflection off of their defense player.
Right? Like from a goal scoring perspective, that concerns me a little bit too, but I have all the confidence in the world that they have too much talent, especially in that area, for that to be the story of the series, in my opinion. But they're going to have to figure out a way to handle Vegas's physicality better and to, give a few more hits back, right? Maybe start a few more fights. I don't know. I don't know what you do.
Like, honestly, Spicy Tuna, he ain't your best player.
Put him in for a few minutes.
And I know that you probably, in playoff hockey, you probably can't afford to just take the unnecessary penalty. But I think there's a tacit agreement here between these two squads that it's like, all right, it's gonna get ugly. And by the way, when the Gunther Rush offsides shot happened, and it was both teams penalized at once, and you're 4-on-4, that's better for the Mammoth. If you're
Absolutely.
4-on-4 or you're 3-on-3 and there's more spacing on the ice, that's better for the Mammoth. Like, if you can goad somebody into fighting with you and you both spend some time in the box and we get a little bit more open ice, let's go.
Are we going to call this Spicy Tuna 4-on-4? Is that what this strategy is going to be called?
Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe McBain is really the guy.
McBain, as soon as they announced he's back and ready for the playoffs, I was like, oh, that's a big deal because that's a guy who most of his game is being an enforcer, right? And he's got playoff experience. So, yeah, I would say that he's probably the one that they'll probably deploy out there to maybe do something like that.
On the text line, thank you, by the way, for the correction on the text line. And this is 100%. I don't know why I had Florida Panthers stuck about. It's because it was a Kachuk that was fighting. Kachuk,
it was
Tampa and Ottawa. It was
Tampa.
It was the Ottawa Kachuk. It was Brady Kachuk fighting against Stahl. So Florida's not even in the playoffs.
I was going to say I should have known enough to say I thought Florida missed the playoffs, but I didn't know for sure.
Rylan on the text line says, and I know it's early and it's the playoffs, but that's rivalry type action. I'd be absolutely ecstatic if this starts a true rivalry. It would be in everyone's best interest if the Mammoth and the Vegas Knights become a real hockey rivalry. That would be fantastic. And a spirited playoff series is a great way to start establishing that. They're a new franchise. We're a new franchise. We live in an awesome place. They live in a scummy, dirty place. They've got a good arena experience. Ours is going to be slightly better as we figure it all out. You know what I mean? Like, let's make it a real rivalry. That'd be fun.
Delta's a better company than T-Mobile.
Delta's like the top airline. T-Mobile's like the third best mobile carrier. All right.
Yeah, it's gonna be great if that's what this turns out to be, and if Game 1 is any indication, I think it absolutely will. What do you think of? And I'm stealing this from the text line during Bryson Bianucci, the morning show on ESPN The Fan. There was they were soliciting future nicknames for this rivalry, and the one that I liked best was Sin City versus the Strip versus the Summit.
I'm going to lean in further to the stereotypes about these two places. Saints versus Sinners.
Saints versus Sinners.
That's
pretty good too.
I don't think that there's actually any Latter-day Saints playing for the Utah Mammoth.
No.
I don't think any of the players are Mormon. But, that's when people think of Vegas, it's Sin City.
Yeah.
When people think of Utah, They either think of nothing at all or they think of, well, it's a bunch of Mormons.
Yeah.
So let's lean into it,
Saints
baby.
versus sinners.
Saints versus sinners. Otherwise, it's just like an I-15 rivalry.
By the way, did you see, real quick, did you see the sign? I was scrolling through social media. The sign outside, I think it was Beer House in Vegas, that said Mammoth going extinct tonight. I mean, I was like, yes, I'm here for that thing, even though it's at our team's expense. Like, I'm here for the snarky back and forth.
We might have to run. We got some giveaways. We might have to run an Golden Knights insult contest here.
Yeah.
Like, give me the best Golden Knights insult. Bonus points if it's a pun of some kind. Golden Knights, more like Golden. See, can't even come up with anything.
Losers.
All right.
Golden losers, maybe.
877-353-0700. Always love hearing from you on the text line at Real OC Sports. On Twitter, go vote on the polls that are out today. There's 2 polls. Do you want to see WrestleMania covered like a sporting event? We've done this one before. And also, is the spring experience, the spring fan experience, better than the spring game? Is it worse than the spring game? Is it equal to the spring game for you, the fan? Let me know what you think. Devin Jackson, NFL Draft Insider, joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Time to talk a little NFL draft, which, of course, you can listen to right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We are your home of the NFL draft on your home of the Utes. Devin Jackson, kind enough to join us, NFL draft insider over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Devin, welcome to the show again. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on again, Sean. And yeah, this is a draft week and one of the most exciting weeks of the year, so I'm looking forward to it.
The Dexter Lawrence trade, how much does that alter the top of this draft now that Cincinnati and the Giants came to that agreement?
Yeah, I think it changes the way that the Giants approach it a little bit. And not more so with like necessarily the first pick, but I think with the second pick, because now it opens them up. It felt like, they were going to, probably go, best available at number 5, whether it was going to be Caleb Downs or Jeremiah Love or Sonny Styles. And then maybe on day 2 of the draft, go after a receiver. But now they have a chance with 2 top 10 picks to, pair a defensive player up with a weapon for Jackson Dart. So I think for the Giants, you're looking at probably Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles at number 5 overall, seems where a lot of the smoke is starting to lean toward. And at number 10, if there's a receiver there like a Jordan Tyson, I think that will make a lot of sense for the Giants. But, they also could use some interior line help. And, Vega Ioane from Penn State, I think will make a lot of sense. And I think it gives them some flexibility in that first round and changes a little bit the way that maybe, those picks 11 through 15, 11 through 16 shape out. And maybe there's a tackle that slides down the board a little bit because obviously the Giants are set at offensive tackle right now.
Was this a win for Cincinnati? We've talked about how they just don't have the defense to match what they've got offensively, but also, if you're Joe Burrow and you're looking at like, cool, we got a defensive lineman, can I get an offensive lineman maybe? Is this the right move for Cincinnati in your opinion?
I think for them, I think right now, yeah, probably so because, I think they just haven't been really hitting on their first round picks of late. I think they, are a team that, goes for the high upside trades for the developmental player, typically in round 1, and they just haven't been hitting on those guys lately. And obviously the jury's still out on Shamar Stewart, but, I think for the Cincinnati Bengals, you need a guy that's going to be productive that can give you stuff right away and right now. And so I think it's a good first start. I think Dexter Lawrence certainly helps that defense, but they're still going to need some more secondary help and obviously, as you mentioned, offensive line help, and they still have to nail the draft. So I think right now is a good first step for Cincinnati, but they still have some work to do for sure.
I was listening to Rich Eisen this morning, and he had Fernando Mendoza on, and obviously Fernando still projected to be the number 1 pick to the Raiders. When you watch his film and you listen to his interviews, and fit is an important thing. And we've had former players on, and we've had people talking about how, look, Fernando Mendoza was undeniably a great college football player. I know that we've kind of touched on this before. The aw shucks Boy Scout thing, is it going to work in Las Vegas of all places?
I think it's going to work if they're having success. I think it doesn't really matter, the way that, people are, maybe perceived or the leadership that they bring or the type of style that they bring. I think every player is a little bit different, the way that they approach the game, all those things. But I think success, trumps everything, whether, it's the way, whether you have like quiet leadership like a Justin Herbert or you have kind of more, those rah-rah speeches that you've seen in the past. I think it all comes down to how successful he is early in his career in Las Vegas, and if he can really elevate the offense and make it, it doesn't have to be like a top 10 offense, but something that's enjoyable to watch, that's something that, they're moving the ball consistently and being, somewhat of an explosive offense. So I don't really look at it as a fact of like, all right, is it going to fit in the locker room? I think more so, whatever he brings to the table, can he win? And I think that's what teammates and players mostly care about more than anything, and obviously the coaches and the owners. Can you win and can you, go up against some of the best within your division because you're going to be playing against Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, and can you really elevate the offense? So I think that's what's going to matter most about about Mendoza's fit is not necessarily his personality or the way that he approaches his leadership, but I think if he can elevate the offense and truly win some games for them, because that's what they desperately need right now.
If you're not already following Devin Jackson, do so on Twitter at @reald_Jackson. You'll see, if you scroll down a little bit, a little graphic with Spencer Fano in one of the best available collab mock drafts. And obviously, he's the first name we expect to hear called with Utah ties. And, what's the latest on Spencer Fano, everything you're hearing?
Yeah, I think he goes in, the kind of that. I think you're looking at a range of probably like 11 to 19 is where I feel like he comfortably fits in. I think he's going to be a guy that, probably doesn't go, inside the top 10. It's certainly possible, but, I think there's not a ton of like tackle needy teams in that range. So I think that was what's going to make his landing spot interesting. But, in the teens and the late teens, I think that makes a lot of sense for his range. And I don't think he's a guy that's going to get too far down the board. And if he does start to slip, I think you're going to see teams get a little bit aggressive and going up and grab him. But yeah, I expect him to go within that 11 to 19 range and comfortably, in kind of that first half of the first round. And if not, he won't last that much longer.
Is Ohio State going to be the most decorated, the most talked about college program after this draft? I mean, we hear a bunch of big names up top. You've already mentioned a couple of them. And that's one thing that helps in recruiting. It helps in the reputation of a college program moving forward. Obviously, Utah's expecting to get a little bump, especially on the offensive line recruiting, when they can say, yeah, we had 2 tackles, maybe both of them in the first round, or a first-round guy, a second-round guy. Which team is going to come out looking the best after this draft from a college standpoint?
Yeah, I think you have to go Ohio State. There's a potential that, 3 picks inside the top 10 are from Ohio State and from the defensive side of the ball. I think that speaks volumes to, what they've been able to do recruiting wise, what they've been able to do development wise. Obviously playing under Matt Patricia last year certainly helped a lot of those prospects too, getting NFL coaching and a guy with NFL head coaching experience and defensive coordinator experience at the next level. So I think for Ohio State, you have to say them. But I also say Indiana is probably not too far behind. I think obviously Mendoza being the first overall pick, then you're going to have guys that go on day 2 like D'Angelo Pons and Elijah Surratt, and obviously Omar Cooper Jr. could also be a first-round guy too. So I think Ohio State and Indiana are the 2 teams that come out looking, some of the best, because I think it goes to show, especially on Indiana's perspective, and not really having that top upper echelon type prospects in the draft class. Usually they're a little bit of later round or UDFA guys. They're going to have, maybe 5, 6, even 7 guys drafted. But Ohio State is kind of the standard, and they have been for a little bit. And they're once again, having top guys come out and be top picks in the NFL draft.
Trent Williams and the 49ers have reached an agreement. He's extended now. He's with the team through the end of 2027. And Caleb Lomu has been talked about as a potential fit with the San Francisco 49ers. I think a short-term deal like that probably doesn't change anything for him if the Niners are interested in him, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Does Trent Williams being extended change what the Niners do with their pick at the end of the first round?
I don't think so. I think for San Francisco, they're kind of in a weird spot, right? They're 27 overall. They're trying to continue to extend their Super Bowl window. So I think maybe it makes off the tackle a little less likely, but if Caleb Lomu is the best player available on their board, I can certainly see them taking him because Lomu is not going to be a guy that is going to be an immediate starter at the NFL level. I think he's going to take some time to develop and get acclimated to the game and get a little bit stronger. But I think for San Francisco, you're looking at really a situation where even if Trent Williams plays really well this year, he's missed games and he's been banged up over the last couple of years, and he just hasn't been on the field maybe as much as San Francisco likes. So you also got to think about the long-term aspect of it. Yes, he's still playing well into his 30s, but you got to have that contingency plan ready in case he does walk away from the game, or in case they do decide to trade him or something like that next offseason. So I think with Lomu, being a potential fit there, I think it still makes sense. I think for San Francisco, it's Lomu. Maybe they could go safety and take a guy like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo. Maybe they could go receiver and add more to the receiver room. After losing a couple guys this offseason. So I think for the 49ers, it opens up a little bit for what they could do at 27. But obviously, it just depends on what the board dictates and who's there at 27.
What is Jeremiah Love going to be in the NFL? You hear some pundits talk and say he's the best player overall, but he's a running back, and some teams devalue that position. Recently, I think because of guys like Christian McCaffrey, teams have once again embraced how valuable a great running back can be. What is Jeremiah Love in this draft and in the first 5-10 years of his career?
Yeah, I think he's one of the best players in this draft class, and I think it's not even just the running ability and the elusiveness in the open field. It's the value he brings as a pass catcher. Notre Dame really split him out a little bit more this year and allowed him to run routes and win, vertically and win one-on-one against safeties and linebackers. That specific skill set is so valuable for NFL teams because he's not a guy that you're just going to hand the ball off to 30 times in the backfield. He's a guy you can throw it to in the flat. You can throw it to in one-on-one situations with linebackers. So, I think skill set wise, he's coming in and, you can make an argument maybe top 7, top 8 on skill alone, because there's not many guys that can bring that two-way and that two-way dynamic ability. And I think that's what Love. You're getting a guy that has a chance to quickly ascend into that top 10, top 12 range of running backs just because of his skill set alone. And the production, I think, is going to be key to what he does. But, yeah, I think you're getting a prospect that's more in the ilk of like a Christian McCaffrey, where he was so good with the ball in his hands no matter where he was. You can put him out as a slot receiver, and he can make things happen. So I think that gives him, some strong ability. I think Bijan Robinson, too, is probably in that ilk as well over the last, 8 or 9 drafts. Saquon Barkley up there. If you bring value as a receiver out of the backfield, and in addition to being a home run hitter as a runner, you're going to find, early success in the NFL. And I think Love is on that trajectory.
You're out there in Philadelphia. How is the A.J. Brown saga going to end?
Well, all reports seem like it's going to end in a trade. It seems like it's trending that way, and post June 1st, when the money will be spread out over 2 years instead of taking a big dead cap hit this year. It seems like it's probably coming to an end this summer. So, I think it's certainly not, a great time right now, obviously, with the draft coming up and, hearing that Brown is probably going to be traded, and it's been trending that way for a while. I think there's still a little bit of a denial for Eagles fans because it's hard to see a guy that was so, vital and critical for the Eagles' Super Bowl success, the Super Bowl runs that they've had over the last couple of years. To want to still be out and go about his business and go somewhere else. But I think he's at a point of his career where, he wants more production. He wants to be more involved in the offense, and the Eagles just aren't at that juncture right now with still leaning a lot of run-heavy offense and kind of relying on Brown to kind of bail out the passing offense, on vertical shots. So I think, A.J. Brown, it seems like he's going to probably end up as a New England Patriot. And, I think for the Eagles, it seems like that split is inevitable at this point.
What are the Eagles going to do in the first round?
Yeah, I think they're going to go offensive tackle. I think they're going to want to try and get, better at that spot and want to have a contingency plan for Lane Johnson. He's entering the twilight of his career. He's still playing at a high level, but he's been banged up over the last couple of years. He missed games last year. He missed games the year before. So I think for the Eagles, they want to try and get kind of a successor to him, and guys that can fit in, maybe a guard, maybe a tackle. You looking at Caden Proctor from Alabama, I think he's been a name connected to the Eagles throughout this process. Massive offensive lineman, power, athleticism, everything you look for in kind of that bigger offensive lineman type. Monroe Freeling from Georgia, he could go as high as in the top 10. Could be a guy that lasts a little bit into the teens and early 20s. So I think those two guys are at the top of the list, and they can go Maxi Hondershore from Arizona State. They could go Lomu from Utah as options as well. So I think tackle is at the top of the list. And then, next, is Kenyon Sadiq going to make it down to 23? Probably not. So I probably cross him off the board. But maybe he's available via trade up. And then after that, I think receiver it has to come in mind. Jordan Tyson seemed like a guy that was potentially falling down the board, but it seems like he's probably going to go, top 10, top 15. So he's probably out of the Eagles range. But Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M is certainly an option for the Eagles. Denzel Boston from Washington. Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. So I think all those things combined, I would go, probably tackle, then maybe receiver, and then maybe edge rusher as a third position that they could target. But I think offensive tackle is the group they've done the most work on during this pre-draft process, and the most likely pick, I think, at 23 for the Eagles.
I know it's not going to be a first-round pick, but you did have a chance to catch up with Utah's own Dallin Bentley at the Shrine Bowl, and that's a name that's been floating around in the Eagles circles as far as I know. So is there a possibility that Dallin Bentley ends up wearing Eagles green?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the Eagles were down at the Shrine Bowl. They had like a heavy scouting staff, presence. So I think with getting a guy like Bentley in, get him on day 3, a guy that can come in, has some blocking ability, the receiving ability, I think is what's really going to interest teams and interest the Eagles specifically. And a guy that still has a runway to develop. He's still relatively new to the position. He played in high school, and only had one snap before his season ended. He went on a mission of Latter-day Saints, and then he came back and went the JUCO route, played a couple years tight end there, and then a couple years at Utah. So he's been on quite the journey, from playing one snap in high school to potentially be an NFL draft pick. And I think he will fit a long-term need for the Eagles, because the Eagles only have, I think like 5 or 6 tight ends on the roster, but about 3 of them or 3 or 4 of them only have 1-year deals left. So they need more tight ends in that room and need some younger presence in there. And I think Dallin Bentley checks a lot of those boxes, and they've been interested in him throughout the process.
Enjoy the draft. Always appreciate your insight and your time, Devin. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sean. Look forward to maybe talking again sometime down the line.
We absolutely will be checking in again, probably recapping where the Utes get drafted. Remember, Spencer Fano projected to be in, like you heard Devin say, that kind of 11 to 19 range, in some places even a little higher. Caleb Lomo still holding strong as a projected late first round, early second round pick. Guys like Bentley and Logan Fano and Lander Barton expected to be day 3 guys, but we hope to see all of them get their NFL opportunities in the best possible fit. All right. We got to get to a hot lunch here in just a second, but a reminder for all of you out there that now is the time when everybody out there is looking at their house, right? They're walking around the neighborhood. The weather's nice again, and you're seeing the outside of your house for the first time since fall. And you're going, you know what? We could probably do something to make those windows look a little bit nicer. Or maybe, worst case scenario, maybe you're starting to see when the sun beats into your house, holy cow, how's my air conditioner not able to keep up with this? You need more energy efficiency. You probably need new windows. Don't take my word for it. Make a phone call, 801-850-9100. Let Advanced Window Products come out. Advanced Windows will send somebody out there. They'll tell you what you need. They'll tell you where the deficiencies in your old windows are. They'll tell you what you could do for your home with new windows in terms of more energy efficiency, in terms of appearance. Maybe it's just window coverings that you need. Maybe you've got old, like, aluminum blinds that are just not optimal for your house. They can take care of you on all these fronts, and they're going to warranty their work. They're going to warranty their product for the life of your home, and it is their product. It is manufactured, it is sold, it is installed, it is all taken care of by Advanced Windows. So there's no runaround if you do have a problem, like, hey, I need you to cover this warranty. Hey, we don't cover that. That's actually the manufacturer, and I'm the installer. They take care of all of it at Advanced Windows. 801-850-9100, advancedwindows.com. Tell them OC sent you. Hot Lunch next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, Nick Olczyk's going to join us in just a couple of minutes, so I'll make the hot lunch quick. Reminder, 4th Annual Funnel Cake Festival is back this weekend at Lagoon. We want to send you and your family. We've got a 4-pack of tickets to give away during Topical Trivia right around 1:45 today on the show. Fruity Fun funnel cake, tiramisu funnel cake, caramel apple funnel cake. They got it all. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tickets are available online now. LagoonPark.com for a discounted price, actually. It's $83.95 plus tax. No promo code needed. 4th annual Funnel Cake Festival at Lagoon. We might be reaching the end of an era. This is the story I have for you in the hot lunch. Jimmy Garoppolo considering retirement from the NFL. He's considered the top available backup quarterback on the market, but he and his agent have been floating the idea to teams that maybe he doesn't want to play. He's going to need a perfect fit if he's going to stick around in the game of football. No, Jimmy, please don't do it. 64 games started in his career, $156 million made. Jimmy Garoppolo has made $2.5 million per game.
Niners legend, Jimmy G.
Niners legend indeed.
Is it
In my
number going to go on the Ring of Honor?
No.
Levi's Stadium?
No.
Oh.
Oh, man. That backup quarterback life, I don't know why you would walk away from it. He's 34 years old. He's going to make like $2 million plus, probably a lot more than that these days. Probably make like $8 million to be a backup quarterback somewhere.
Especially if he goes back to the Patriots with his boy Josh McDaniels as the OC. Like, you know, he's always going to want him some Jimmy G.
Jimmy, you're just going to go live on the road, being extra handsome and rich. Just a couple more years of this, man. Get to that $200 million career payday, Jimmy. He's considering retirement, though. All right, we got to take a break again. Nick Olczyk, Utah Mammoth analyst for SEG Media, NHL color analyst on Sports USA. Mammoth Insider joins us next to talk what else? Playoff hockey. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 2 on a Monday. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, and we're lucky enough to have Nick Olczyk join us, Utah Mammoth analyst. You can see him on Tuesday night on the Utah 16, the local broadcast for Mammoth versus Golden Knights playoff hockey, Game 2 of the opening round series. Nick Olczyk, welcome to the show again. How are you, sir?
John, great to be with you, man. Really exciting time here in Salt Lake City, and of course with the first ever playoff berth for the Mammoth. The build up for the game last night was special. You could feel the energy from Vegas, even though for some of us who weren't there were watch parties going all around the great state of Utah. It's the best time of the year, and I know everybody's very excited that their favorite team is in the playoffs.
Absolutely buzzing for Friday night when we get to see this team host a playoff game, but we'll try to be patient for it. And let's talk about what happened in the third period last night. You've got a much more seasoned and veteran eye on these things than any of us do. What happened to the Mammoth in period 3?
Well, I think it was one of those games where Utah did a heck of a job in the first 2 periods, and look, I think at the end of the day, there's going to be adversity throughout the course of a game, as throughout a playoff series as well. And I think Utah can be relatively happy with how they played. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You saw the post game press conferences where the disappointment was that there was a 4-2 loss, but this team did a lot of good things. But I really think when you look at the game in totality, there's John. I think 2 areas really stood out to me. First is the Vegas Golden Knights defensemen. They love to pinch down the wall. And by that, I mean, when Utah's got the puck in their own zone, their defensemen are really tight up. They don't sag. They don't retreat. And so when the defensemen move that puck to the wingers along the boards and Utah's trying to work themselves out of their zone, there is not a lot of time and space at all to be able to make a play, let alone when you do get the puck on your stick. So I'm looking for an adjustment there to help Utah break out a little bit cleaner as the game goes on. But man, oh man, did they ever have some good rushes in the first 2 periods. And then once you did get to the third, I thought the biggest difference in this game overall was the net front presence for the Vegas Golden Knights. And then they had a presence all game long, but in the third period, it seems like they really turned it up. They did not really let Karel Vejmelka see any shots that were clean from distance. And then on the reverse side of it for the Utah Mammoth, just think they need to do a better job of not only getting a player at the front of the net, but more. Vegas's defense, they're big, they're mean, and they are more than capable of moving guys out of the front of the net. So anyone trying to screen their goaltender, they have the strength and the ability to move them out of there and allow their goaltender to get a good, clean look at it. So I'm looking forward to Game 2. We saw a lot of nastiness in that game, and plenty worth talking about, and some of the bad blood that's continuing to build between a budding rivalry between the Golden Knights and the Mammoth. But I think the pinching defenseman as well as the net front presence ended up being a real difference maker in the third period in Game 1.
I know stat lines don't tell a full story, but the Mammoth got out hit 52-30, I think was the official final tally. How problematic is that? And is it something that they can close the gap on in Game 2 and beyond?
It's to be expected. This time of the year, it's hit or be hit. That's the mantra for every player. And what I love so much about this time of the year is, yes, the guys that are naturally more physical are going to have a field day, but look for some of the guys that maybe aren't traditionally the physical type. Look for those guys to be just as physical. And I think one guy for the Vegas Golden Knights that really brought it was Ivan Barbashev. I mean, he led the team and led the entire game with 13 hits just for him alone. But, Utah's game, they play a physical brand of hockey in that they're not shy to go body on body, and they have their fair share of guys that can hit, whether it's Brandon Tanev up front. Michael Carcone may not be the biggest guy in the world, but he's never afraid to throw the body. Lawson Krause had 9 hits in last night's game as well. So is it their style of hockey to a T? Maybe not. but that's where you need to rely on your speed to try to be able to move the puck quickly and know that, yeah, you're going to be hit. You're going to need to be able to take hits to make plays. And I think for times, Utah did that well. But come playoff time there, Sean, it is hit or be hit. And yeah, 52 hits. That's the most the Vegas Golden Knights have had in a playoff game in their history. So I think that really speaks to the rivalry that's beginning between both of these teams. And a lot of those hits led to whistles. And after the whistles, the hitting, the face washing, the shoving, the pushing, the grabbing, the chirping didn't stop. It continued on even more energetically after the whistles. And in terms of the physicality of that game, it was very evident from the opening puck drop. And Utah's going to have to make sure that they're ready. And one more thing in terms of the hitting aspect of the game in game one, one guy that really stood out to me, who was demanding the puck, who wanted it on his stick, who scored the first ever goal and will be the answer to a trivia question, first ever playoff goal in Mammoth history, and that was Logan Cooley. I have the pleasure of seeing him up close and personal for all the home games when I'm down there between the benches, and he is the kind of guy that, yes, he can take over the game with his skill set. He can take over the game with the speed that he possesses, but he can also take over with some of the jawing and the physicality going back and forth. When he gets hit, he hits back. When he's pushed, he shoves back. When someone says something to him, you better believe he's giving it right back to him, and he's certainly not going into a hole. Logan Cooley had 4 hits, and they were pretty noticeable hits, including a couple of reverse hits as well to try to get a little bit more time and space for himself to make a play, and, of course, the beautiful goal that he scored. So everybody's got to ratchet up their game in terms of the body contact this time of the year, but it is certainly a calling card for the Vegas Golden Knights team when you look at the makeup of their group, both on the D-core as well as the forwards, and then looking for a even bigger response for the Mammoth in totality in Game 2.
Yeah, Cooley certainly got under the skin of Nick Dowd. I mean, the highlights going around of the death threat,
Yeah.
And
right.
You love to see it. I love to see the chippiness. I know that this team is kind of growing into what its playoff identity is going to be. Obviously, it's the first time they've all played together in the playoffs, first time this franchise, this version of it's been in the playoffs. And, the spacing on ice in playoff hockey, and I think you were trying to describe some of this with those pinching defensemen and things like that, but is it something that they can address formationally? Is it something they can address tactically, the Utah Mammoth, in order to get guys like Gunther, who's maybe not the most physical, and I don't say that as an insult, it's just not his game, to get him better looks, a little bit more space, to where his speed and precision has more room to breathe against a team like Vegas?
Yeah, this time of the year, it's about subtle little tweaks, subtle adjustments. And if we are going to use that pinching defenseman as an example, there's really 2 ways to do that, Sean. First is all those wingers along the boards, they can come a little bit deeper. And so the more you retreat into your zone, the defenseman probably going to be a little less apt to come down the wall because they got to come such a further distance, a little bit more risky for them. Or the inverse of that is, as a winger, as soon as you see that your defenseman has 100% control of the puck, that's where you can maybe kind of pull out. You're not flying the zone. You're not picking cherries. You're not looking for the Hail Mary pass in behind, but you pull out a little bit closer to their defenseman, so that way you force him to vacate the space that he's in, and you're able to kind of almost reverse pinch in a way. And I think with a guy like Dylan Gunther, I thought that line of he, Logan Cooley, and Kyler Yamamoto were the best line for the Utah Mammoth. And Dylan certainly had his fair share of looks. He had 15 shot attempts. I mean, he was all around it, especially off the rush. And the one thing that we saw from that line in particular, aside from just the great youth and the skill, is the speed, is that when they were able to move the puck quickly and efficiently out of their zone through the middle of the ice, their speed was really tough for the Vegas Golden Knights to handle in the area of the ice in between both blue lines. So I think that is another way that Utah can find a way to generate even more off the rush. And yeah, Vegas is a big team. They have some fast players, but I think you give the speed and pace edge to the Mammoth. And if they continue to use their speed through the middle of the ice, that's going to help them in a big way. And then the next most important part to that is if Utah's able to get a shot off the rush or they're able to make a play, They got to find a way to be able to recover those pucks off of a rebound that squirts to the corner or a rebound that's at the front of the net. More inside play, I think, is certainly going to help this team going into Game 2 to create a little bit more in terms of the offensive side of the game.
Utah Mammoth analyst Nick Olczyk is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. You can catch him on Tuesday night on the local broadcast. It'll be on Utah 16 as the Mammoth once again in Vegas taking on the Golden Knights, Game 2 of the first-round playoff series. What happened on the empty netter that Vegas scored? We saw like the down ice view from behind Veggie, and on the broadcast there was a conversation about whether or not he was skating over to the bench when he was supposed to be. In your perspective, what happened when Vegas was able to salt it away and go up 4-2 on the empty netter?
Yeah, well, just for rule of thumb, for goaltender pulls, the head coach is the one that decides when the goaltender is pulled. And usually the whistle prior, when it's late in the game, you're down by one, there is eye contact or a quick conversation at the bench before the play resumes between the goalie and the head coach, letting them know, hey, watch for me. I'm going to let you know when to come to the bench. And it was one of those situations, I think, in the offensive zone where it was a perfect storm. Utah had it. Andre Tourigny was calling for Karel Vejmelka, and whether he didn't see quick enough, whether he didn't exactly acknowledge when he had to go, it looked like there was a little bit of hesitation. And then as soon as he left, Vegas got the puck and they sent it all the way down. It is such a quick bang play whenever you call the goaltender. Now, in a perfect world, you get into the zone, you get set up, you have full and total control of the puck. Then you can pull your goaltender while you already have control. You get the extra skater on there. For me, I love to see when teams are aggressive, where maybe they haven't even gained the offensive zone yet. They're still in the neutral zone or they're breaking out. I love to see when teams pull goaltenders that way, so you get the extra attacker out there. It's a 6-on-5, and that way that extra player can help you win a battle. They can help you get in on the forecheck and find a way to win a puck back that way to establish the zone. But I really think in that situation there, there was clearly either a miscommunication or a little bit of hesitation between Karel Vejmelka and the bench. But overall, it was really the perfect storm, because as soon as he was called, Utah had it. Then they lost it almost instantaneously. And then the Vegas Golden Knights were able to gain control and send about a 163-foot shot into the open net.
How much concern is there internally with the penalty kill right now? They the most impactful goal, I think, in this game was when Vegas got the power play goal. They killed it all the way down to 12 seconds left in the power play, but then Vegas got that power play goal to grab themselves a lead. And the stats in the last few games haven't been excellent on the penalty kill. So is there concern there?
It's had peaks and valleys. Towards the beginning of the season, the penalty kill was towards the top in the league. Then they hit a valley. And then about midway point of the season, that's when they started to find their groove. And it really was a bit of a roller coaster ride for the PK this year. But there have been stretches, John, where they've killed off 19 of 20, or they've killed off 23 of 25. And that's been a real strength. No difference from the power play, which was humming the last 10 to 12 games of the season after going through a cold spell before that. And for the penalty kill, especially in the game last night, like special teams, that's the difference. And it didn't help that Utah had one of their top penalty killers, Alexander Kerfoot, in the box, a guy that has been so crucial while down a man. The way he reads the game, the way he's able to clear pucks the entire length of the ice, but also the reads that he makes up the ice, not allowing the opposition easy entry into their zone. But that power play in particular for the Vegas Golden Knights, honestly, Sean, there really wasn't a ton going on. Yes, there was a few saves, but I thought Utah did a real nice job of protecting the middle of the ice. And in that instance in particular, they got stretched out. They got a little bit overextended. Vegas was able to make one play towards the net. It was Marner looking for a shot tip to Tomas Hertl at the front of the net. And then one of the best net front goal line power play players in the league, Mark Stone made the difference in the game, which he so often does, and that ended up tying it 2-2. So adjustment-wise, moving forward, I liked how they killed off the first minute and 40-plus seconds of that penalty. I think there's a lot to like there. But this time of the year, I think that just goes to show more than anything that special teams can be the difference in a game. And Utah, which I don't think they had that many undisciplinary issues during the course of this season. But it just goes to show you take one penalty. That's all it can be the difference. That's all it can take. And all of a sudden that was a special teams difference in the hockey game.
So what's a reasonable expectation you think for Tuesday night? A lot of us are novice at best hockey fans, right? And you want to see adjustments made, but when you haven't grown up on a rink, you maybe don't understand those adjustments all that well. It was going really well for 2 periods, and the third is where the collapse happened in Vegas for Game 1. What should we expect in Game 2 of this series?
Well, I think some credit. Again, I know we're all Mammoth fans here, but I think just looking at it from a hockey purist point of view, you have to give some credit to the Vegas Golden Knights for sticking with it. I would totally co-sign your point there, Sean, and that Utah really took it to them. They really skated at them for 2 periods, but credit to the Vegas Golden Knights. They've got a winning pedigree. They won a Stanley Cup 3 seasons ago, and in 2023, they have some unbelievable players. They got a goaltender, Carter Hart, who was really feeling it last game, the guy that they hope is going to be their savior, considering the goaltending position has been a real sore spot. But Vegas hung in there. They got some timely saves. They were able to defend just enough. They had some real solid block shots. Their penalty kill came through with a big-time kill. So you got to give credit to Vegas for sitting in there and not starting to play high-risk hockey when they were down 1-0 or when they were down 2-1. They stuck with it. They continued to play the brand of hockey that makes them a great team that they are. And under their new head coach, John Tortorella, from the end of the regular season into the postseason, they're 8-0-1. And he hasn't come in and tried to change anything systematically because it was already so deep into the season. It's like studying for a test and then just throwing something brand new in there. You've already done all of your studying. Trying to cram before the test really isn't going to do much for you. So if anything, John Tortorella has reignited a fire within this group. And so, yes, you got to give some credit to them. But for Utah, I think it goes back to a couple of things we talked about off at the start. They played a really solid 40 minutes. I think they had a good push, especially towards the end of the game when it was 3-2. But Vegas was just able to hold on. So trying to bypass our pinching defenseman, I think, will be a real key in trying to allow Utah to create even more off the rush, of which I think they can be happy enough with what they did in Game 1, but look for that to play a real role in Game 2. But also, it's got to be more people at the front of the net to try to make Carter Hart's life a lot more difficult. And when you go to the front of the net, the puck can hit off of you and go in. It can hit the goaltender and pop right out to you for an open net. But also, just by going there, you attract defenders to come with you, and that's going to open up a lot more space for the teammates that are trying to patrol the offensive zone. And the last point I will make is, for as good as the second line was of Cooley, Gunther, and Kyler Yamamoto, I thought Lawson Krause was a beast out there. I thought he was on a mission with 9 hits and very much involved. But I'm looking for a big bounce back from the likes of Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz, guys that had a couple of looks in that game. But these are 2 players that can really take over, especially when they're feeling it together. One's got it, he's looking for the other, and vice versa. Look for those guys to have a real response in Game 2 and hopefully lead the way to a Game 2 victory for the Mammoth in Las Vegas.
Who's going to fight Keegan Colasar before this series is over, Nick?
There's a couple of tough customers on this Mammoth roster, and we'll have to see if, is there going to be any lineup changes? Is Liam O'Brien going to draw back into the lineup? But Utah's got their fair share of tough guys. Lawson Krause has never been shy of shedding the mitts. Mackenzie Weegar on the back end, he's a tough customer. And Ian Cole, he's not afraid to give a couple of licks either. So I think those are a couple of more than willing combatants this time of the year. And one guy who had a little bit of a dust-up with Keegan Colasar at the end of last game was a guy that hadn't played since early April, didn't even practice or skate the last couple of weeks and then just magically appeared into the lineup, that's Big Jack McBain. He can go toe for toe with a guy like Keegan Colasar, so we'll see if maybe that could be a physicality and a fisticuff matchup as the series goes on.
I thought we were going to get a little extracurricular with Colasar and Sergachev after the game had gone final. half the guys are skating to the off the ice, or they're headed to the dressing room, and those two were still holding on and jawing back and forth.
Sending a message, Sean. That's the key. Whether you win the first game or lose the first game, you're trying to send a message and let the opposition know that, some guys are saying, I'm coming for you. Other guys say you better keep your head up. That's what makes playoff hockey so great, because it's all about trying to take every inch of ice that you possibly can, and certainly each one of these guys is doing their best to inflict physically or verbally.
I know we got to let you go, but before we do, we're not going to have a chance to talk to you before Friday, and that is the first playoff hockey game hosted at the Delta Center. Very much looking forward to it. I know the atmosphere is going to be electric, but just give me your expectations for what that moment is going to be like. Puck drops on playoff hockey on home ice for the first time for this franchise that has been such an incredible addition to our sports community here in Utah.
Two parts, Sean. First, it's going to be unbelievable. And second, I don't know how unbelievable it's going to be. and that's the exciting part. Sellouts consistently at the Delta Center this year. I happen to live right downtown. Whether I'm at the grocery store, whether I'm at the gas station, the barber shop, there's people talking hockey all around town. There's people wearing the merchandise. There's folks with the jerseys. There's kids with the Tusky plushies. Like, I'm so proud to be a very small part of an organization that has done so much for this community. And look, at the end of the day, none of this is possible without both Ryan and Ashley Smith, who brought the National Hockey League here to Utah, and very clearly off the rip did not see this as an asset for them. It's a gift and an asset for the community. And I think Mammoth Nation has done an unbelievable job of being inclusive to let new fans come in. And yes, there's a lot of older hockey fans as well that have a lot of experience watching hockey, or maybe transplants that are here that are new Mammoth fans that are formerly fans of other teams. And to me, there's nothing better than playoff hockey. And so for everybody to be able to get a taste of what the National Hockey League playoffs and Stanley Cup playoffs are like, that's exactly what I'm most excited for about these fans. And I'm pumped to see the traditions that we come up with. I can't wait to see the face paint, the body paint, the people dressed as mammoths, like Halloween costumes, and the pomp and the circumstance of the pregame festivities that are going to be taking place on the SeatGeek Plaza right out front of the Delta Center. Like, it's the best time of the year, and I'm so excited to share it with our unbelievable fans, because I know I'm biased in saying that, well, I've been playing hockey since I was 3 years old. It's given me everything that I have, and so I know everything that this amazing sport can provide for people, an outlet, a distraction, something to come together for and with and to support. I think Utah has done it right from the very beginning, and that Game 3, no matter how Game 2 goes, that place is going to be rocking. It is going to be an intimidating and intense atmosphere for the Vegas Golden Knights to be in, and I don't even need to say Utah needs to show up, because they have showed up since day one. I just can't wait to see them show out at Game 3 at the Delta Center.
I love it. We're growing into being a hockey town, and I don't care how long it's going to take. I've got young kids. I'm excited that – it's hard to find space in these signups. You can't get your kids into hockey. That's how popular it is right now. I moved here.
It's only going to continue to grow, Sean. It's only going to continue to grow, and I can say with complete confidence and certainty that this place is a hockey town, and all you need to do is just walk around town, and it's very obvious no matter where you're at.
Nick, I moved here when I was 9 years old from St. Paul, Minnesota, and that was 1993. 1992 is when I moved here, and there was one ice sheet that you could get on, and there was no hockey. There was no hockey culture here, and coming from Minnesota to that was crazy. And the fact that now we're becoming what we're becoming when I'm in my 40s, I never would have thought it was going to happen here, but like you said, Ryan and Ashley Smith made it possible, and the way that the community has embraced it. It's been really, really incredible. And obviously you've been a massive part of it as, the guy that we hear translating what we see on the ice for the average sports fan. So keep up the great work. Thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see you Friday night.
Sean, it's my pleasure. There's nothing more I love doing than being able to entertain and inform, and then hopefully we've done that for all of our incredible fans out there today. Not just in playoff game number one, but all of last season and the regular season to this point. There's nothing better than when a fan comes up and says, "Hey, we learned something from the broadcast," because that there's nothing that makes us feel better. So at the end of the day, the boys on the ice are getting the job done. The team's getting the job done in the community, and it's an honor, it's a pleasure, and an absolute thrill to be able to call Utah home and be part of something very special here with the Utah Mammoths. So same to you, Sean. Keep up the great work, and all I will say is for everybody during these playoff run, just buckle up, because game one wasn't anything compared to probably what games 2, 3, 4, and who knows, maybe more than that are going to be like.
That's Nick Olczyk. Again, the ESPN broadcast is great, but tune into the Mammoth broadcast. Tune into the local broadcast on Utah 16, and you'll see Nick Olczyk there. Big thanks to him for joining us. The Festival of Tees, ladies and gentlemen, is going on right now. Powered by the Utah Golf Association, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. We are giving away free rounds of golf to the best courses in the state and beyond every day, right here on the Sean O'Connell Show and also on The Drive with Spence Checketts. Make sure you're tuning in this afternoon also for your chance to win. We've got a free round to Lakeside we're going to give away next during the Daily Dump. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. The truck with the duck handles it all for you. Tell them OC sent you. Go to valleyplumbing.com and set an appointment right there. You don't even need to pick up your phone. You can just do it in their little chat feature. Stanley Cup playoffs continue tonight. Not for your Utah Mammoth. That'll be on Tuesday down in Vegas. NBA playoffs happening all over the place. And exciting things happening for Runnin' Utes basketball. You heard about this in James's update. Noam Yakov, European League. It's effectively the Belgian G League, sounds like. He's a big star over there. And he's going to go through, he's going to kick the tires on the NBA draft. But the expectation is that he is going to be at the University of Utah. Over the weekend, they added TJ Birch, the Defensive Player of the Year in the Horizon League. Tyson Chapman from Ohio State. He was at one point the biggest recruit out of the state of Minnesota. He's been 3 years at Ohio State. He's a big-time three-point shooter. Malek Goma from Weber State. It's coming together for the Runnin' Utes. I'm not going to lie. I was looking at the mass exodus. I was looking at Keanu Dawes going to Kansas. He also, by the way, is going to test out the NBA draft waters. And obviously we all watched what Utah basketball was this last season. And it was like, all right, I know that there's a plan. I know that there's a vision. But whatever that is, we're not seeing it on the floor right now. Now you're getting, I think, some clarity in the recruiting. I think there's more defensive-minded players coming in the recruiting. I think that this European/international pipeline is going to be massively important for Utah, and I don't think there's any coincidence there. When Alex Jensen was a player and when his legendary coach, Rick Majerus, was forming the foundations of Runnin' Utes basketball, they were already tapping into that pipeline that it took several other teams a lot longer to find. So cautiously optimistic, but some production coming in. And yeah, you want talent. Yeah, you want raw bodies. Yeah, you want the A.J. DeBonces of the world. Not realistic right now. So you're bringing in guys who have production against big-time competition. And I'm not going to hate on any of it. We'll see what it looks like. I'm not going to gas you up and tell you that this is the savior or saviors of the program and suddenly you're going to beat the Arizonas and BYUs and Kansases of the world. But I like the resumes that they are bringing in. And obviously this coaching staff now is a full coaching staff, a full recruiting staff. They're not slapping it all together like they were last year. As remember, there was like a 1 week process of him getting the job and then having to put a recruiting class together. This is more thought out. This is more crafted. So I like what we're seeing this far from Alex Jensen and his staff.
Yeah, and I think TJ Birch in particular addresses like a huge need that we saw from the Runnin' Utes last season. They didn't really guard, right? Particularly on the perimeter. They were small. And two is another big need. They were a little bit too small. They didn't have a lot of big men. But like they addressed kind of both those things with Goma, some size with Goma. He's not the tallest guy, but he gives you some size and hopefully some physicality. And he's got, I think, 3 years of eligibility left. So they addressed it with that. And then TJ Birch, I mean, bringing in a defensive player of the year to, yes, a mid-major conference, but a defensive player of the year out on the perimeter should lead to a lot of improvement on that side of the ball.
That's the hope. And again, we'll see what the actual product looks like. But when you bring in somebody like that, on a basketball team especially, right? Tone setters are important even in a massive roster like football teams. When you bring in somebody who is defensive-minded, it changes the way the practices are run. Like, it's not just the coaching staff blowing whistles and screaming their heads off about getting back and about guarding and about closing out, right? If you have players that do that, other players are going to be expected by their teammates to do it, and they're going to have that example to follow. It's going to be that almost subconscious effect. So I like what we're seeing here.
And don't forget the 5-minute wonder from the BYU game at the Huntsman Center last year, Lucas Longarita. He's back and hopefully healthy for more than about 5 minutes of play. It was a spectacular little stint he had against BYU. Unfortunately, had to leave the game and didn't play again the rest of the season because of injury. So you got that European pro that's coming back on the team next year, presumably, and then you're adding, knock on wood, the draft does. It sounds weird to say that. Hopefully, the draft doesn't work out for Yakov, so that he plays for Utah next year.
I have to sneak this in because we're going to spend most of the week heaping disgusting praise on the Ohio State Buckeyes football program because it's NFL draft week and the first round and all rounds of the draft are going to be populated with Buckeyes.
I heard that program's really awesome, OC, so that makes sense.
Well, apparently they're not awesome in their equipment program. Did you hear about this?
You set me up for that. No, I missed this.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, he was plagued by hamstring issues when he was at Ohio State.
Yeah,
you remember that?
That's true. He really only had the 1 year, unfortunately, the one they carved up the Utes in the Rose Bowl.
You know, they figured out why. The Seattle Seahawks figured out why that happened. The Buckeyes were giving him the wrong size shoe to wear, James.
Are you serious?
He wore a size 12 cleat when he was at Ohio State.
Nothing to see here, OC. Nothing to see here.
Seattle has been using high-tech body scans to make sure that helmets, shoulder pads, and even cleats are properly fitted for their players. Guess what size cleat the now hamstring problem-free Jackson Smith and Jigba is wearing in the NFL after wearing a size 12 at Ohio State?
It's not going to be something crazy like 10, is it?
It's 10 and a half.
Oh, my gosh.
He's wearing a 10 and a half.
So wait. You shouldn't need a body scan, high-tech body scan, to know what someone's size is.
Well, obviously, I'm enjoying using this opportunity to drag Ohio State, but really, Jackson Smith and Jigba, what are you doing?
How did you not say, hey, these are a little big?
You're enough of a player to be like, my shoes are kind of wobbling, or my feet are wobbling around in these shoes. Can I get something smaller? Like, you're not some scrub walk-on who's like, can I please have one pair of cleats? They're like, no, get out of here.
Yeah, you had to accept like 3 sizes too big stuff because that's who you were on the team.
Guess what shoes, not when I went to Weber, but guess what shoes I wore when I was at the University of Utah?
What's your actual shoe size?
I wear a size 12.
Okay.
And but the Utah cleats that were available to the crappy walk-ons like myself.
the rest of the cleats
after
everything
like
was
they were
over?
kicker cleats, basically. They were like soccer cleats. They're like, here, you can have these. I wore my high school cleats.
Did you?
Yeah.
They're better than what Utah could give
you.
So what size would you have worn if you wore the Utah cleats?
I mean, they were – I would have worn a 12, but they were like slippers with cleats on the bottom of them. Because they wouldn't give, like, you had to get a starter to go grab you gloves.
Oh, no.
Like football gloves. Be like, hey, will you go ask for another pair of gloves?
Because they wouldn't listen to you when you
because the equipment staff had been instructed, like, they don't get anything. Don't give these guys anything.
Oh, no.
So they were just like, so you would have to get, like, you have to befriend, like, a Spencer Toon and be like, hey, or like get a Weddle, hey, could you grab me a pair of gloves? And, of course, that's from an era where those guys weren't getting what they get now either, right?
Yeah.
So even if you were a starter, you had one helmet, you had one game jersey, you had one game pair of pants. That's it. So it's not like they were just like, yeah, give me 10 pairs of gloves. So those guys were like, wait, I can get a second pair of gloves and you want me to give it to you? So it's like, it was not easy.
Like, okay, ask for 2 more pairs then.
I just don't understand how this happened with Jackson Smith and Jigba at Ohio State.
By the way, at the beginning of the NIL era, so this was not even like old guard. This wasn't even old guard. Like you're not air quotes not allowed to get paid. Era of college football. This was Brave New World, beginning of NIL era.
Ohio State. Lawsuit incoming from Jackson Smith and Jigba because you had to wear the wrong size shoes, you morons.
Also, I can't get over that they use full high-tech body scan to find what size people are. Like, what do you? You can't just give them the right size.
You know the high-tech process I've gone through to make sure what size of shoes I should wear? I try on shoes.
Well, I'm wholly ignorant of how you know what size of pads to wear and all that stuff. Didn't play football. But I got to think that's not that different than trying on a pair of shoes, OC.
Every kid who ever played Little League football, you go down and there's that musty, stinky room full of old pads, and you put them on, and you're like, these are too big. These fit pretty good. And they're like, all right, you take those.
So you're
slap you on the shoulder.
This one's a little too big. This one's a little too small. This one's just right.
You have somebody's like overweight dad huffing and puffing and sweating in that equipment box, and he puts a pair on, shoulder pads on you. He balls up his fists. He slaps you on both shoulders, and if they move too much, those are too big, and you take them off. And then you put some more on. Those are too small, and you put on the ones that are just right. Bang, bang, bang on the shoulders. All right, that's good. And then
go out there and tackle somebody, kid.
You figure out how to boil a mouthpiece. I mean, these are all rites of passage. They're not something that happens when you're at Ohio State, okay?
And they're not something you need to spend probably millions of dollars on to find the correct size for people. I don't know. I feel like the body scan might be a little waste of money for the Seahawks, but whatever.
Well, they got plenty money of it. It's fine.
And why do I care about the Seahawks? We hate them.
So I don't know if anybody watched WrestleMania this weekend.
No.
WrestleMania had they have back-to-back nights in Vegas. And obviously, you've got playoff hockey happening in Vegas right now as well.
Vegas was it's always a zoo in Vegas. It was probably
just a nightmare. That
ratcheted up by like a million.
So I'm not a pro wrestling guy. Like, I can appreciate the athleticism it takes, the performative talent it takes to become a star in that field. You can't get me to sit down and watch a lot of it. It's just not my bag. It's fine. And a lot of people are dragging this year's WrestleMania, saying that it was bad, saying it was soulless. The weird thing here, so Brock Lesnar, who obviously was a real athlete in multiple sports. Brock Lesnar, collegiate national champion and All-American at the University of Minnesota, almost made the Vikings roster, became a UFC champion, right? And he's a huge WWE wrestling star. He took off his shoes, and he's wearing gloves, I don't know why, for WrestleMania. He took off his shoes and gloves and left them in the ring, which is usually indicative. In wrestling, you take off your wrestling shoes, you leave them on the mat. That's retiring. Do we care? It's Brock Lesnar. Like, he was a real athlete, and this might be the end of Brock Lesnar's public life. He's always been kind of like a recluse. He goes out and he circles back into orbit, and then he goes out and he disappears for a while, and then I don't know, maybe he just needs more money, or maybe he likes doing 5 or 6 shows a year, and then he comes back and, Brock Lesnar's back. But it seems like Brock Lesnar retired. Is that something that the sporting world, like, I should be talking about on a sports talk radio show? Brock Lesnar.
I mean, I think it's a bigger deal. It was a bigger deal when he retired from MMA, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because it's real sports, for one, but also because he was... I mean, we talked about phenomenons in sports, in various sports, and you correctly identified Conor McGregor as the one for MMA, but before Conor McGregor, for a minute there, it was Brock Lesnar. Like, he was this beast of a man who came from the wrestling world and was kicking people's you-know-whats in the octagon. And so I think it's a bigger deal when he stopped doing that, but also that was years after he was a phenomenon, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So, and Brock Lesnar might have retired, maybe, or this could just be setting up a future storyline. I mean, some of these guys wrestle until they're like 80. So,
I mean, how about our guy on the Utes broadcast who's still doing his thing? Sorry, I've blanking. My mind's going blank here, but our favorite heel.
Our favorite heel in what?
From the wrestling world locally here. Matt Robles. There you go.
Oh.
He's still going, right? He's not
80.
He's not
You had
80.
me think-
He's
you
not
had me
80.
think- you had me thinking of like an old
No,
like
no,
my
he's
grandpa.
not. Sorry. That's terrible framing. He's not that old, but he's not a spring chicken either. Still doing his thing.
I mean, pro wrestling is it's its own wild thing, and it's like Pat McAfee did his show today wearing a neck brace from
Yeah.
WrestleMania.
He's not actually hurt.
I'm
just
sure he's
wearing
not actually hurt. I'm sure it's just part of the bit, I guess. And he's loved it. He's done a great job in it. And they were talking more about WrestleMania on his shows last year than they were talking about like the NFL, than they were talking about draft coming up. It's an odd deal. But anyway,
Yeah, Dan.
sorry,
go ahead.
I put a poll out whether WrestleMania is something that people watch and should it be covered like a pro sport, and 85% of people said no. So I'm comfortable in saying we're fine there.
I think people watch it. I just don't. I think that even the people who watch it religiously, I think that there's enough of a split that say it's a great entertainment, but no, it should not be covered like it's a real sporting event. It was Dan Patrick brought this up. He's like, it's just, you shouldn't be breaking news. ESPN should not be breaking news on SportsCenter about WrestleMania and asking questions in interviews like, what do you think's going to happen on Saturday? It's like, he knows what's going to happen because it's not real. Like, I don't know. It's entertainment, not sports. Sorry.
Have you ever heard the term pace shaming?
I have not.
All right. Well, we're going to bring some obnoxious political correctness to your awareness today here on the Sean O'Connell Show during the Daily Dump. So Nike had a Boston Marathon ad that said, runners welcome, walkers tolerated.
Okay.
They have a flagship store in Boston. I've been to this store. It's a great store. It's a beautiful store, multi-level store. They get exclusives there that you can only buy at the Boston Nike store. It's awesome, okay? It's on Newbury Street. We would say Newberry Street. And in conjunction with the marathon, they put this big ad out front. Runners welcome, walkers tolerated. People will do anything to be offended. People can find offense in even the most innocuous and silly of places. Obviously, you're supposed to run a marathon, okay? We all know this. Everyone who is involved in a marathon knows this. Runners welcome, walkers tolerated. If you have to walk during the marathon, I'm not going to shame you. Go ahead and walk. Just finish. It's funny. It's tongue-in-cheek. Protests, people getting mad, hate mail. Nike kowtows to it and pull the ad on the front of their Boston Marathon store. Runners welcome, walkers tolerated.
Andy Bernard, really mad right now.
Guys.
Remember he says he walked 3 marathons in the office? I mean, come on now.
What are we doing? And then this is the worst part. They replaced it with a new ad that says, Boston will always remind you movement is what matters.
That's so much catchier than what they had before.
So here's my mental picture of this, okay? You have a normal person working in your advertising department, and they're just like, okay, give me your Boston Marathon special ad. We're only going to run it for a week. And they're just like, runners welcome, walkers tolerated. And everyone has a laugh. Ha, 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 okay, good. Let's put it out there. And then you get the hate mail, and then you go to some, like, weird blue-haired, gets mad at everything, the person in the office who just complains and is always sending the, I'd like to remind everyone that if you're using scented soaps at home, it's really causing irritation for some of us. And by the way, don't use the microwave if you're going to have cheese products because I'm lactose intolerant. You find that person and you say, all right, we need an ad that would not offend you. And then that person comes up with the ad. And that's what they put on the flagship store in Boston. Stop doing this, corporate America. First of all, stop doing this, complainers of America. And then stop doing the response thing, corporate America. Nike, just be like, it's a joke. Anyone who completes the marathon, anyone who participates in the marathon has our admiration. We're Nike. Good job, guys. And we are now introduced to a new, brand new, completely out of left field term, pace shaming. Here's what I'm going to do. The Salt Lake City Marathon.
I think it's this weekend, by the way.
Salt Lake Marathon goes down a street in my neighborhood. I used to live on this street. I no longer do. I would sit out in a lawn chair cheering on the runners. I would sit my dog there. We'd have a good time. We'd spend like an hour just clapping for people. Now I'm gonna go out there, and I'm gonna pace shame anyone who's walking, because we now have a new pace shaming lexicon.
How about a poster that says "You're tolerated, walkers."
A walker also tolerated.
with your own hand drawn Nike swoosh.
By the way, the winner, the women's race, 2 hours 18 minutes 51 seconds.
Okay, that's
so crazy.
That can't be real. That is so fast.
A guy named Marcel Hug, which is just phenomenal name, won his 9th and 4th Boston Marathon in a row, and he broke his own course record by 33 seconds.
Go Hug.
I did not know that the Boston Marathon official logo was a unicorn either.
I didn't know that either. I just knew it was the red, and I knew the color scheme, the blue and yellow. Excuse me. I don't know why I said red. Blue and yellow color scheme. That's really all I knew about it.
So we should have the winner. Ask them, do you tolerate walkers? Or do you only welcome runners? Let's start creating a little divisiveness in the marathon community. Congrats to anyone who's ever completed a marathon, walking, running, wheeling, dancing, whatever you've done. That's a 26.2 miles. It's a heck of a thing.
Dancing a marathon.
Just have please, for the love.
Flipping, doing some cartwheels the whole way.
Somersaulting. Why not? Just have a sense of humor about the Nike ads, please. All right. We'll double up here. Dan Sorensen is going to join us. But before I take a break, we have a round of golf to give away in the Festival of Tees. Lakeside, 877-353-0700. The first ever playoff hockey goal scored by a Utah Mammoth player was scored last night by whom? Who got credit for the first goal? 877-353-0700. Tell me who that is. We'll give you a free round to Lakeside. Dan Sorensen of Ute Zone joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Oh, welcome to hour number 3. Welcome in Dan Sorensen, kind enough to join us to talk a little Utes. Spring football is a wrap. Instead of a spring game this past Saturday, they had a 22 Forever fan event. Fun for the kids. I don't know if it was fun for everyone else because there was a long line for the autographs, but people seem to be happy and good spirits waiting there. Dan Sorensen, how are you?
Doing well. How's it going, OC?
I'm doing all right, man. It's good to have you back on the show. It's been a while. So before we get to any, meaningful football conversation, how do you think the Saturday fan event versus spring game comparison is going to be handled, processed by Utah fans?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was there on Saturday checking things out. People that were in attendance seemed pretty excited. I loved the kids zone thing with letting the kids run around and jump on tackling dummies and that sort of thing. If you have a family, if you've got kids, like that's ideal, way better than the spring game. I get why they changed it, wanting the extra practice, wanting to limit contact, limit injuries, that sort of thing. From the message board at Ute Zone, it's probably 50-50 in terms of people that are missing the spring game and wish that they'd seen it and love to sit in the stands and get some sort of a glimpse of football in the long off season versus the people that like to engage with the players and engage with the coaches and that sort of thing. So I think it's probably going to be a pretty healthy split. I personally liked it, but I'm not a fan of spring games in general. So that's just me. And I don't necessarily expect people to have the same tastes that I do.
All right, let's talk about the actual spring practices, the media observation. Morgan Scally opened things up a little bit more, especially that final 2-hour viewing period, almost 2-hour viewing period. And look, we know that there's some questions that need answering. I think the number one for a lot of people is how's the offensive line going to look? So let's start there. Based on what you saw, based on conversations that you've had, and knowing the talent that they brought in, especially guys like Kelvin Obot, how do you think this offensive line has taken shape to this point?
Yeah, I think that they're right on schedule for where they want to be based on what we saw. And look, we saw limited portions of practice. We saw a couple of full sessions, only one of them full contact, so to speak. But it's a little tough to gauge, that when they're doing the running game, it's not necessarily full bore contact like you'd see in a game. We saw a lot of passing sets, so I think we've got a better view of how they can handle a pass rush, how they can handle a blitz, that sort of thing. But from what we saw, from what we heard from both coaches, from other players, private conversations that I've had, I think that they're feeling pretty confident about this line and feeling like it's going to be better than most people will expect, having to replace those 5 starters. You mentioned Obot. He came in, he looked really good for a true freshman in terms of physicality and having a body that looks ready to go. I think that obviously the game still needs to slow down for him a little bit. It's to be determined whether we're going to see him in that starting lineup this fall, but I think that they established probably 7 guys that they trust, and 3 of those guys we know are going to be surefire starters in Zero A. Williams and Keith Olson and Alex Harrison likely at center. And then there's going to be some battles, but it was nice to see a guy like Ike Garcia, who's been in the program a couple of years, was hurt all year last year. He looked really, really good, especially towards the end of spring football. And so that unit is coming together. They need to develop some cohesion. There's a lot of work that needs to be done throughout May and the summer. That the battles are going to continue into fall camp in terms of who's going to actually start. But I do think that when the lights are on and this team takes the field, that offensive line unit will probably be better than most fans expect. I'm not expecting them to come anywhere near what we saw last year. I think that was a once-in-a-generation type of a line for Utah, but I still think that they're going to be good enough for this Utah offense to do some things.
We had Kevin McGibbon on last week, and he basically said, Kelvin Obot is going to be a guard this year. I mean, a lot can happen between now and when they actually take the first snaps of live competition, but right now that's where they're working him out. And he obviously was a tackle in high school because, of course, when you're built like that, you're going to be, and he'll be a tackle at some point in his career at the University of Utah. I think it's less of a physical readiness thing and more of like a learning a playbook and getting used to the pace of the game and things like that at this level. But when you see somebody like that being put inside to play guard, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. I think it says less about Obot and his readiness and more about Zeraway Williams and what he's bringing to the table as that, graduate level senior. You got the extra year of eligibility. He's had a lot of injuries that he's dealt with throughout his whole career, but you can't coach 6'8", 305, and he's looked as solid as any lineman this spring. And so if you've got a guy like that at left tackle that can handle the job and he's got some experience and he's an older guy who's been in the program for a long time, kicking Obot inside is a good idea. You want to get him reps. You want to get him on the field as much as you possibly can. If you can win that starting spot, it's about getting the best 5 out there. And yeah, to your point, next year, Kelvin Obot's the starting left tackle, barring anything strange happening. And I think that's a great path for him in terms of what that'll look like, both not only for his personal development, but for the team as a whole.
So, I mean, we've probably belabored the offensive line point, maybe even too much for some people, but that is, you've got maybe all 5 guys will get at least some opportunity for professional football. The top 2 of those are going to be as high as first-round draft picks, and it's a big thing to try and replace that, like you just mentioned. Beyond offensive line, and I've asked, I think, all of our football guests all spring about this, where else are you worried? What is the secondary concern, if that's the right way to put it, in terms of replacing talent from last year?
Yeah, I think that coming into spring, there were 3 main areas. So offensive line was number 1. A close second would be the defensive line, and then third place would be cornerbacks and replacing all of the talent that left that room in the offseason. Defensive line definitely was a question mark heading in. I think that a lot of those questions got answered. The defensive tackle room looks deep. They look good. They look bigger than last year. The transfers that they brought in Jam Wallace and Lucas Samsula and Jai Moe especially, those 3 looked outstanding. Carson Kafusi looks like he's taken a leap. Pupu was looking really good in early in camp especially. So I think that defensive tackle room is going to be much improved than what we saw a year ago. And they've got a lot of able-bodied guys there that are going to have a fierce competition, and that competition is going to raise all boats, so to speak. So I like what we're seeing at interior defensive line. Edge rusher, I think that there's still some questions to be answered. We saw some really good things out of a few of the guys in the room, and guys that where you would expect to see a lot of progress. Lance Holtzclaw, he's a senior. He was in the defense last year. He was coming along nicely towards the end of the year. He's a guy that we expect to be out there a lot. He looked good this spring. Cash Dillon looks like he's really close to making that leap. We've been hearing about him for the last couple of years, about how coaches have very, very high expectations of him. And he's a guy that, once that light bulb really goes on for him, he could be a force, and maybe even a John Henry Daly type of force. But he's got to put it together, and he looks like he's close there. I think he had a pretty solid spring. And then, of course, Ethan Day, the transfer out of North Texas, he looked really good as well. He's got a great motor, looks like a good leader, a good culture fit. So they've got those 3 at defensive end. There's others that are fighting for it to get on the field and be part of that rotation. But overall, D-line's looking pretty good, and the cornerback room, I think, is going to surprise some people as well. Lots of new faces. Basically, the only people that we saw last year really were Scooby Davis, who we know what he can bring to the table, and then maybe a little bit of J.C. Hart as a backup and Rock Caldwell as a backup. And beyond that, it's all new faces, but we saw some really good things, some really excellent progress throughout the course of the spring. The biggest thing, and Sharif Shah brought this up in his media availability, is they got to learn how to defend and be physical without being too physical, without grabbing too much. So watching for the PI, and if they can get that cleaned up, they can be a pretty solid group.
Who are the top three linebackers going to be? I feel like you might be embarrassed for choice here because I like what I've seen from that group, and obviously you've got Jonnu Hall back, but I wanted your perspective on who you think the top three linebackers are. Technically, your base is still a 4-3, even though opposing offenses force you into nickel packages more often than that. But if you had to start three guys right now, who would it be?
Right now, John Hall, of course, he looks like he's going to have a big year. I'm a big Trey Reynolds fan. I think that he played really, really well down the stretch last year. We saw his reps go up as the season progressed. He's going to be in there as a starter. Once again, another senior that can get out and get it done and be a leader. The third guy, I think, is really where the question mark is. I think it's going to be Cyrus Polu, the sophomore. He was a 4-star recruit coming into campus last year. He saw reps on the field as a true freshman. He looked outstanding this spring. Just a high motor guy, ability to rush the passer, ability to drop into coverage. He's getting smarter. He's physical. He looks really, really good. You can't discount Elijah Ellis, who I think we're going to see a lot of as well. And between those two, I think that they're probably the ones that are going to battle for that third spot. And we might see a lot of Taysom Reed. We saw a lot more of him towards the end of spring than we did in the beginning. But I think that he's a guy that could be a rotation guy. But, yeah, to your point, there's a lot of great choices and really love what they have, especially with the senior leadership. But, man, Cyrus Polu, if I had to pick a kind of a dark horse breakout player for the Utes this fall that maybe the casual fan doesn't know, he's the guy.
This is the first year I can remember where we don't come into, well, spring ball and then into fall camp saying who's going to catch passes, who's going to be the threat on the edge. Feels like that problem, if you want to call it that, has been addressed with transfers for the most part. But you can revise this answer when we talk in the fall. But based on what you saw in spring, who will the leading receiver for this Utah football team be in the fall?
Man, that is tough. Look, the ridiculous fan in me wants Utah's leading receiver to be Semi Taulanga, but that's not realistic. That's NCAA football on your Xbox type of a thing. Really, it looks like it's going to be an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position. I don't think that I'd ever thought I would say that sentence when talking about the Utes, and frankly, not even about this year's Utah team. But to your point, they did a great job in the portal. Braden Pagan from Utah State looked really, really solid. Ricky Johnson from Mississippi State is a guy that over and over and over again you would ask about who's standing out from the receivers, and he's a guy, or who's hardest to cover, that sort of thing. And he's a guy whose name came up a lot. I think he's going to do some things and surprise some people this year. And then Kyrie Scholes shows great burst. Tremendous talent, great body control. So those three receivers, I think, are definitely going to be in the mix. Of all of them, man, leading receiver, I mean, I guess Pagan, just because he's a guy that's put up an 800-yard plus season, and nobody else really has done that yet. But there are going to be a lot of guys that are going to be out there to be able to catch passes. Creed Whittemore looked really, really good, vastly improved this spring. Nate Johnson looked vastly improved this spring. Larry Simmons, he's a senior now, and he came on strong at the end of the year and loved what he did. And he was a guy that, once again, he's reliable and you can trust him. So there are a lot of guys that they're going to get in that rotation. There's only one football. I don't necessarily think Utah's going to have a 1,000-yard receiver, and that's mostly because they've got so much talent. I don't think it's going to be just one guy that's going to be the breakout guy. But Pagan is the guy that I would guess is going to be your leader.
How are they going to use Hunter Andrews? This was a question last year. It was like, yeah, he's a running back, but he's also a tight end, but he's also just a slot receiver, but we could use him defensively also. What are they going to do with Hunter Andrews? A healthy version of him can be a massive weapon for this team.
100%. And I think that that's the key, right? Is how healthy is he going to be? Is he going to have that same elite speed that he had pre-injury last year? And there's a lot that they can do with him if that's the case. They can run him out into the slot as in kind of a Brant Keithy type of role that he made so many big plays for the Utes doing that. He can play a little bit with his hand in the ground. He's not as big as some of the other tight ends, but he can do it. They can, run that orbit motion and hand the ball off to him. And we saw him make big plays early last year doing that. And I think that we're going to see more of the same, provided he is healthy, and he'll be out there. He's just too dynamic of an athlete to not be out there. We didn't see him a ton this spring, but they're bringing him along slowly. The fact that he was in pads, that he's taking some contact, that he's playing football again is a massively huge sign for this team. And that tight end room is going to be really interesting just because they've got basically Hunter Andrews, who's the athletic freak and the outlier. Then they've got their traditional guys like Noah Benny, who looked really, really good. And then you've got, of course, the Rhinos, who are going to be everybody's favorite. And, Semi Taulanga might be the most popular guy in all of college football right now, based on the Twitter highlights. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use that group. I think that tight end's still going to be an important part of this offense, and we're going to see a lot of one tight end, two tight end sets, and how it's all going to play out is, frankly, it's a good problem to have for Coach McGivern.
I have a prediction, and I probably shouldn't throw it out here yet, but I repeat myself all the time on the show, so you'll hear it again in the fall. We have been pining for a pass first or a truly balanced Utah offense for years. And I think a big reason for that is because you've had a deficiency in the passing game and, pretty reliable run game. The potential for things to switch and for the run game to be less prevalent because of scheme or because of personnel or whatever, I think will make Utah fans immediately start complaining. Like, we need to run the ball more, even though for years it's been pass the ball more. So Kevin McGivern has a tough test in front of him because he's got to replace a top 5 rushing offense in the country, and he's got to do it while also delivering on, the potential of these two quarterbacks, not just one, but two quarterbacks, utilizing a wide receiver room that we already just talked about. Is this an offense that can do those things? Can you check those boxes? Will this be balanced?
I think that they will. I think that, last year, look, it was a better passing offense than it probably should have been, just given it wasn't a particularly strong wide receiver room last year, and frankly, they ran the ball so effectively. But they still, they had 373 attempts. They passed it for 2,800 yards last year, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I think that's a solid baseline, and having at least that as an expectation this year is not unreasonable. 2,800 to 3,200 yards passing. I expect a slight uptick. I think people that are expecting a purely pass happy offense will be disappointed. And frankly, Scally talked about that. He corrected it a couple of times where, somebody would basically make that insinuation and ask him a question. He's like, where did I ever say that? And so they've got the tools to throw the ball more, to be a little bit more balanced. The nice thing is that they've got a really strong running back room. I think a lot of it's just going to be dependent on the offensive line and where their strengths play out. So if they're better at run blocking, if they're able to get down the field, if they need to use the jumbo package more often and they're able to throw out of it, what does that look like? Or if the offensive line is just better pass protection and maybe they struggle in run blocking. I think that's going to determine a lot of what you see from a statistical perspective. But it looks right now like they've got the tools that they can absolutely be balanced, and we can see them relying on the passing game a little bit more. I think either way, Scally doesn't care as long as he's getting explosive plays and they're converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns. And frankly, that was what the team was so good at last year. And so I don't think it's unreasonable to expect something similar this year, despite the fact that the line is a big question mark.
What are special teams going to look like?
That's a great question. That's the one thing that we really didn't see a lot of in the spring. And, we know Dylan Curtis came in as an All-American kicker and a national record breaker in many ways. And he had a decent freshman season. I think that he would have liked the Utes to use him more often. Whittingham definitely went against the kicking game in several games. And so we maybe didn't see everything that we might have from him last year. And so my expectation is that if he's healthy, that we're going to see him a lot this fall, and he should be a reliable kicker for the Utes. They've got Orion Phillips back as the punter. And so the specialists, I think that they're a fairly known commodity, and we should expect to see what we saw last year, maybe a slight uptick in terms of their production based on just experience coming into a new season and being ready for it from a returner perspective, and who's going to return punts and who's capable of that, and who's going to return kickoffs, that sort of thing. It's a good question. There are a lot of different candidates. Bray is a guy that I think could do some interesting things in the return game. Kyrie Scholes is a guy that can do some interesting things. And so I think that they've got playmakers that should be able to be pretty solid in those roles. But yeah, special teams, absolutely a question mark. And really it's going to be one of the interesting things about the Scally era. For so long under Whittingham, Utah was so good at special teams, and not just with the specialists, and they're the ones that got a lot of the attention with, the Ray Guy Awards and that sort of thing. But frankly, the coverage units tended to be elite and really strong. And the return units tended to be really strong, and we saw a lot of big plays coming out of those units. And so it's been down the last couple of years. I think that everybody would agree with that. And so it'll be interesting to see how much of an emphasis that Scally makes on that, how well that they can get dialed in. Frankly, they've got a lot of athletes that, especially in the skill positions at safety, at cornerback, at linebacker, that should be good from a coverage perspective. And frankly, they're going to play hard because it's the only time they're going to see the field, because there's a lot of depth at those positions. And so I have high expectations of them, but I haven't seen anything with my eyes that tells me that. It's more of a gut feeling.
I'm not asking you what your expectation is for this season. We'll get there at some point, probably in the fall. Given what we have seen, you've reported on, we've kind of talked to some of the fan base. What do you think people are expecting from Morgan Scally's first year? I've asked this question of friends and former teammates, and the answers are all over the place. So if we took a poll of the average Utah fan, said how many wins you think this team's going to get, what do you think is the most common answer?
Yeah, I think the average Utah fan, the most common answer would probably be 8 or 9. I think the average Ute Zone subscriber, the people that really pay attention to the roster and just they eat up every piece of information they can get, that their answer would probably be 9 or 10. I think that they would be a lot more bullish on this team than the average fan would be. I think outside of the state of Utah, this team is not going to get a lot of respect. First year head coach, you lose your whole people just look on paper. You lost your two starting tackles to the NFL draft, and your entire offensive line and your entire defensive line and most of your secondary. Like, there's no way you're going to be good is going to be what people outside of the state think, and they're not going to pay close attention to practice reports and stuff like that. So they'll probably pick Utah to finish in the top half of the Big 12, but maybe not in the upper echelon. And I think that that's not founded in reality, but it's understandable why people would think that. But yeah, to your point, there's going to be a lot of people across that spectrum, but I think the average Utah fan is going to expect at least 8 wins, especially with this schedule. It's not the toughest schedule in the world, and so it's a nice on-ramp for Scally for his head coaching career, in my opinion.
If you think you're a Utah football junkie or just a football junkie in general, you got nothing on Dan Sorensen or Sammy Moore or any of the Ute Zone people, because you also, previous to the fan event, you were up at the Under Armour Next showcase that was at West High School on Saturday. Obviously, an elite event for recruits and for people on the rise, for players that hopefully we'll see some of them in Utah uniforms and other local schools getting some rep there as well. What'd you see at Under Armour Next?
Oh man, it was a great event. I was a little worried when we got there because the cold front hit, and it's football in shorts. It's a lot of combine activities, so you see more athleticism and those types of things than you do what you would see on the field. But when it's cold, it's guys get stiff, they pull hamstrings, stuff like that. So, but it was a great event, really impressive. Look, there is. Every year, it seems like the talent in the state of Utah in the high school ranks just gets better and better. And there's some amazing players that we saw in the 2027 class. Bodie Sparrow, he was the number one ranked recruit in the state out of Davis High School. He looked every bit the part. He did reps at receiver. He took reps at defensive back. Fantastic athlete. He's big body. He's aggressive. He competes. He's a leader.
Dan, I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt you. I played with his dad at Weber State. I have never wanted Utah to get a player more than I want them to get Bodie Sparrow.
I get it.
His dad was an unbelievable guy, unbelievable athlete, two-sport athlete at Weber State. Played basketball and football in college, which is incredible. And you only hear great things about his son.
Yeah, and he's an impressive young man, both on the field and off the field. Yeah, and if his dad was anything like he is, I would have loved to have watched him play. But he's a football player through and through. Look, the consensus is that Oklahoma is probably the leader for him. Both Utah and BYU are shooting their shot. He's going to take an official visit to Utah in June, and he's a top priority recruit for the Utes, and he was awesome on Saturday. Crew Jones, the Oklahoma recruit out of Orem High School, incredible. Look, it's the edge rushers that are in state this year are fantastic. Between Crew Jones, who we saw, Manasseh Brown at Corner Canyon, who I think is probably a BYU lean at this point, but he was really, really impressive. Jaggy Owane out of Orem High School was incredibly impressive. He's a guy that he's going to be visiting Utah and Washington and Michigan and a few others, but the Utes are in on him. But yeah, the edge rusher class is awesome. One guy that Ute fans should probably pay a lot of attention to is Jackson, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Itai Howe out of Davis High School. He's a four-star kid by 24/7, an athlete. He could play receiver or defensive back. We think he's going to be a receiver. He's very, very high on the Utes, and the Utes are pushing hard for him. He was awesome on Saturday. Another kid Utah fans should pay attention to, Ian Aloisio out of Timpview High School. He's the top-rated offensive lineman in the state for this class, and also a guy that is very, very high on Utah. Arizona State, Nebraska, they're all after him as well, but he's visiting Utah on that June 19th weekend, which is the last big official visit weekend, and he was very impressive at the camp as well. Just great feet, good body, moves well. He's got a great punch, and he's a guy that could be a high-level offensive lineman. And I think he's got a great shot at being a Ute. So we saw a lot of kids. There were probably just in the 2027 class, probably 20 to 25 kids that are going to be playing high-level FBS football. 2028 class was maybe even better represented. Tayo Fano, who Ute fans that's a name that most Ute fans will know, of course, because of Spencer and Logan, but he's the next, and he's a four-star kid in the 2028 class and was awesome. He's a little lean still, and he needs to grow into his body, but from a technique perspective, he's as good as any offensive lineman in the West. And I had a chance to spend maybe 10 minutes talking to him. And look, his brothers were just impressive humans and really easy to cheer for in terms of the kind of people that they are and the mindset that they have. And Tayo is cut from that same cloth. The Fano family, that mom and dad should be very, very proud of their sons, and not just because they're good football players, but they just seem like smart, solid humans, and Tayo is very much that way. Utah is absolutely going to be in it. He's got schools from all over the country that are coming after him as well, and so he's got a long ways before he's going to commit. But he's somebody that Utah's going to have a great shot at, and they're going to be in it until the end. And look, it could be a really great class in 2028 with Tayo Fano and Gage Weddle. You know, there's potential for some really, really big legacy kids coming in and continuing the tradition on the Hill.
Dan, appreciate your time and your encyclopedic knowledge. We'll chat again soon. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and enjoy your summer as you get ready for fall camp.
We will do that for sure. That is Dan Sorensen, the founding, I was going to say founding member, but he founded it. So
I believe
he's the founder.
I believe the term is publisher in that world, publisher of Ute Zone, but
Okay.
he's also the founder of Ute Zone. I think
Okay.
it's important to note that everyone who loves Utah recruiting coverage, like Dan Sorensen's the OG.
I know I overdo it on this point, but when you have now Under Armour, On3, 24/7, Nike, Elite 11, these sort of staples in the recruiting game and in the high school prospect game are running things in our home state now. There was a time 2 decades ago where you were lucky, even if you were a great player, to get any attention out of Utah. Now Utah is viewed as, and for good reason, is viewed as a hotbed of talent. Hopefully the Utes can stay on the crest of that wave and keep these in-state guys because everybody wants them now. And you got Michigan as a player in the in-state recruiting, which it never was in the past. It's just getting tougher and tougher. Morgan Scally and his crew are great recruiters, though, and they will continue to be so because of the charisma. And if we, the fan base and the supporters that have a lot of commas in the bank accounts can make it make sense for these families and these players, you're going to get some really good things coming through Utah from the in-state crop. That's to say nothing of Texas, Colorado, Arizona, California, Louisiana, Florida. Just the in-state crop of guys is excellent. All right. We're going to give away some Lagoon passes coming up here in about 10 minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Are we witnessing the end of an era in the NBA? Is Steve Kerr going to retire? According to Draymond Green, he thinks yes. Draymond was having a conversation on his own podcast, and he said, if you want my opinion, that was it. And we all saw, I think we all saw at least, the in-game scenario where Steve Kerr brought Draymond and Steph Curry and gave him a hug, and a mic caught, hey, I don't know what's going to happen next. Love you guys kind of a situation. And then Draymond did the most Draymond thing ever. He's on the bench, and he started yelling and got ejected. So that was a perfect end, if there is such a thing, to the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green era at Golden State. And that, look, they've been a staple. They've been a dynasty. They have been a gold standard in a lot of ways, not only from an on-floor standpoint, but an organizational standpoint. They were able to really make some magic happen with a roster that didn't have the same traditional makeup as other teams. They revolutionized basketball in the league with the three-point shot in a lot of ways. And if that is indeed over and Kerr is going to move on, is going to retire or repurpose himself somewhere else, pretty huge deal in the NBA. But going out with a bit of a whimper here as the NBA playoffs are underway and Oklahoma City is smashing people in the early part of the playoffs, and Victor Wembanyama is making even David Robinson and Tim Duncan sitting courtside just smack their own heads in awe of what he can do. I'll have a weird feeling, I think, about Golden State not being that version of Golden State, because that started right when I was leaving the Bay Area, and it's been going ever since. Do you think it's over, James?
I mean, if a guy like Draymond Green is willing to publicly say, I think it's over, I think we should trust that. That being said, we've seen guys change their minds before. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we have like Steve Kerr goes, you know what? Maybe I want to do one more year at Golden State, a little last dance type thing next year. But I mean, Draymond Green said this. It's not all due respect, Brandon Pajemski, who says, my feeling is he's done. This is Draymond Green, who, as you correctly pointed out, he and Steph have been the pillars on the court of this franchise, of that dynasty, with the help of Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, of course. Like, I think a lot of credence to what he says about, if he'd have said, hey, that was probably Steph's last game, I would have believed that too, So I think it matters who's saying it.
The removal of Klay Thompson from the recipe, to me, felt like kind of the first step in this direction. Graphic on the screen right now, 660 wins for the Warriors since 2012 and 2013 with Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green all, and it's makes them kind of like some of the most successful teammates in Steph and Draymond's case in the history of the NBA. And when you see these things begin to like dismantle or be dismantled, when you hear Steve Kerr talking about, there's expiration dates on everything and maybe it's time for some new blood, you don't even talk like that if you're not aware that ownership and management might be pushing that direction, or you yourself are starting to think other things. And I hate to bring it back to an open wound for Utah fans, but this is part of the thing that we learned through the Kyle Whittingham to Michigan process, and why Kyle Whittingham said after it was all said and done and the dust kind of settled that the mistake he made was in entertaining the conversation. When people are like, hey, you've been doing this a long time, how much longer are you going to do it? He answered the question instead of just being like, as long as I want. When you start to talk about the end, whether it happens right now or it happens in 2 or 3 years, the end is coming. You don't talk about the end if the end is not a possibility. And if you don't want the end to be a possibility, you dismiss that. And none of the parties here are dismissing. I haven't heard Steph Curry's comments yet. But Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, ownership, management, they've all kind of said, yeah, we'll see. We'll evaluate. We'll think about it. If it's not over, you say, nah, what are you guys talking about? No. We're going to keep rolling.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler's back next year.
We want Jimmy Butler back.
Team.
We want Draymond back. We want Steph back. Yeah, they're older, but Podziemski's really grown into a role on this team. Like, that's the other thing about it is, like, if you're walking away, it would be easy, in my opinion, it'd be easy to walk away or to make a change if you're talking about ownership, it being from the front office side of things. It's easy to make these decisions if you can hit that reset button and if it's obviously time for a rebuild. Oh, man, these guys stink. We don't have the roster anymore. Steph's retiring, whatever. You don't have a Victor Wembanyama here, but you're also not inept. You're also not a franchise that needs to be stripped down to the studs. And you might be sick of paying Draymond Green's salary, but you're probably not sick of paying Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler yet. And you're certainly not sick of Podziemski. So, I don't know. They call it a summer of uncertainty for the Warriors. We'll see.
ESPN's like, thank you for giving us something to talk about, NBA. Oh, yeah, we forgot it's the playoffs.
Speaking of the playoffs, the best place for you to watch playoff basketball, playoff hockey, and the upcoming NFL draft, Big Willie's at 1717 South Main. They're going to have food and drink specials all day long during the draft, not just on Thursday night for the first round, but Friday and Saturday. Every Mammoth game, special giveaways, special deals. No Jazz playoffs, but you can watch any of the NBA playoff games on the collected big screens they've got there. In between games, go shoot some pool, do your thing. Big Willie's at 1717 South Main with the craft food menu, the craft cocktail menu, the cold beers on draft, and the price point where they keep the daily specials well within the range of let's go out, have a good time, and not destroy our budget by doing so. They're very mindful of that. They want you to come back for every game, not just to go one time and be like, well, that's something I can't afford for the next 6 months. They'll take care of you. Tell them OC sent you at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main, Utah's #1 sports bar. I didn't say that. You all voted on it and said it. All right. We'll give away some Lagoon passes for the Funnel Cake Festival happening this coming weekend next. A family 4-pack up for grabs with a trivia question. It's the Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up on ESPN 700 at 92.1 FM. A family 4-pack of Lagoon passes for the Funnel Cake Festival. 877-353-0700. For a family 4-pack of Lagoon passes. Funnel Cake Festival happening this weekend, and you do not want to miss that. NFL Draft coming this week. I'll make this one easy. The highest drafted offensive lineman ever from the University of Utah to date. 877-353-0700. Spencer Fano may or may not take that honor home after this upcoming draft, but who to date is the highest drafted offensive lineman to play his college ball at the University of Utah? Spence Checketts and the driver up next. Crosstalk is brought to you by Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100 for $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Even in this beautiful weather, sooner than later, it's going to be hot sun, beaten down, roasting your house. Make sure you get energy-efficient window replacements from Advanced Window Products. Hey, Spence.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
Great.
Is that a Mammoth jersey of a specific player? Does it say O'Connell on the back? What's on the back of that
This
jersey?
is actually a Utah Hockey Club jersey from the inaugural season.
Look at you, OG.
And I got this before the team had played, and so it's blank. It's a blank. I didn't know which player I was going to be most excited about, and that's honestly, it's shifted for me already. Schmaltz is my guy right now.
Gotta love him. Great pass, great game. Man, Vegas is big and tough and strong, and they're clearly just trying to get in these kids' heads
And
right from the start.
Absolutely are. And I love that Cooley is rising to the occasion on that.
Mhm.
You can try to overreact to the 52 hits to 30 hits.
Yeah.
That is problematic. But I think that this team's going to come out and be a little bit more physical in game 2, or failing that, is going to try to find ways to use that physicality against Vegas. Say, fine, you're the bigger, tougher, stronger, but you're also slower. There's got to be some response, because you can't – you won 40 minutes of that game, and then you lost the ones that mattered.
Well, in the third period specifically, when I think that physicality just started to wear on them. It was funny before the game, over at KUTV, Jenna was down in Vegas and got some pregame sound. They were talking about their playoff beards. And Logan Cooley, no shot. Like they showed, I think it was Ian Cole, Gunther, his beard is starting to come in. Then they show Logan Cooley. He looks like a 14-year-old that's waiting for his first piece of facial hair to grow in. There's no way he can grow a playoff beard, yet he is such a stud, man. Like, if there's a superstar on the team, it's Keller. But as far as like bright future, man, it might be Logan Cooley. That kid is a stud.
Yeah, we're excited. Look, when you put guys like Cooley and Gunther and Keller all on the right side of 30 on the ice together in playoff hockey for the next 2, 3, 4 years, I think we're really talking about a Stanley Cup contending team at some point, especially if they keep making good personnel decisions like they have. That third period was probably a bit of a wake-up call for everyone in the organization. The miscue with the empty netter with Veggie skating off at the wrong time, all that stuff, those are the tiny little details that in any sport, you can't afford to make those mistakes in playoffs, in championship contention. Like it's where the wheat is separated from the chaff. So it's fine. You get a 7-game series, and Tuesday night will be, I think, a little bit different. You get here Friday. It's going to be even better, so can't wait.
Are you going to the game on Friday?
So I have some PFL travel that I think is going to bring me back in time.
Okay.
And we're manipulating some things to make that happen.
If you're back in time, will you be at the game?
1,000,000,000,000%.
So will I. Did we just become best friends?
Want to do karate in the garage?
Should we film a video? Give each other high fives? This is pretty cool, though. My dad and son will be here. So 3 generations.
Okay.
At the first Stanley Cup playoff hockey game in Salt Lake. Excited for it. This atmosphere.
Who's buying the tickets?
I still have a friend over at the Delta Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's a very important friend.
Okay.
And when I was down at the Jazz game, he said, look, if you want to go, gotcha, playoff tickets. So, yeah, he's my guy.
Great friend to have.
It's an excellent friend. It's Chris Barty. That's my guy.
Oh, all right. right.
Me and CB go back. You know, Chris started as a lowly sports talk radio account executive.
That's awesome.
And now he's like running the show over there. So that's my guy. Chris hooked me up. I appreciate him. He's good people.
Cool.
He is good people. I will say this. I need to get some gear. And I was telling James, I walked through, when I was at the Jazz game, I walked through the team store. And I don't know, man. I kind of like the hockey club gear more than I like the Mammoth gear.
Oh, no.
I know it's blasphemous.
That's
But I got to find something.
bad take.
I got
It's wrong.
Well, I like it.
Your
It's
opinion
clean.
is wrong.
Well, my opinion is mine. It is clean. Look, the Mammoth thing. Okay, on board, we did the thing, but the big tusks. I just like the Utah Hockey Club. It's cleaner.
Okay.
So can I have your jersey?
No.
Okay.
This is an adult size anyway.
That's
It won't fit
why
you.
it's Monday. I'm up to 170, dude.
Whoa!
Yeah. Gains
right.
season, Sean. Got to get the
30
beach.
pounds away from manhood. I congratulate you.
Got to get the beach bod ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm headed the opposite direction for the beach pod.
Good to see you at the Fan Fest. That was fun.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it
That-
was.
It really. I put a poll out. Like, did you, for the fans? Is that better than the spring game? Is it worse than the spring game? And it's kind of like split. If you have young kids like I did, that was better than a spring game.
Yeah.
Because my daughters got to run around and hit tackling dummies for an hour. If I was with like a teenager who wanted to sit and watch football, that probably would have been preferable. But I think the fan base seems to have embraced the alternative, and they waited in line for a long time to get autographs. And I think that ultimately what people want is they just want to meet the players, they want to meet the coaches, and they got a chance to do that.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think most people understand that now, in the modern era of college football, the depth isn't there the way it used to be for everybody, not just Utah, but Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. So I was actually talking to our guy Paul Kirk about this. Keeler up there ran into everybody, which is very cool. It's not just keeping your ones and twos healthy. You need everybody healthy come fall in a way that maybe once upon a time you could rely on depth that just doesn't exist anymore because a 4-star defensive end that is at Bama sitting behind another 4-star defensive end gets a call from Steve Sarkisian and says, I'll pay you $2 million to come to Texas. You got to keep the kids healthy, and I think the fans probably know that. Now, as somebody that would rather stay home than wait in a line for anything, probably understand how that was a bit frustrating because there was a big turnout. I mean, a lot of people showed up. That line was pretty long.
You're told 3,000 to 4,000 people was the count that they got, I think.
Yeah, so that's a long line, but good job, with some interviews there and accessibility for players, and because that's something you probably remember as a kid the first time you met a athlete that you looked up to. That's memories like that for children. They live on forever.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think a cool event.
Really, really successful spring camp, I think, for this Utah football team. And now the guys that need to get bigger will try to get bigger in the summer weight training. And the guys who need to get faster will try to get faster. And we are 4 months away from it mattering for real and knowing what kind of head coach Morgan Scalley is.
Yeah, we'll blink and it'll be here. We always complain when we don't have football, and then it shows up and we blink and it's gone. So big summer ahead, and excited to see what we've got come fall.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts right here on ESPN 700 and 92 FM. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. Do it again tomorrow.